The story begins at the Devil's Palace, which is also called the Merm Demonic Alliance. A huge crowd has gathered there, and this surprises a newcomer who is seeing it for the first time. A bearded man explains that the Devil's Palace accepts anyone. It does not matter which faction or sect they come from. As long as a person has talent, the palace will teach them demonic martial arts. The bearded man says he cannot understand what kind of fool would refuse such a great chance. The man standing beside him sighs sadly and says that he is already too old. If he were younger, he would have applied without hesitation. At that moment, the bearded man notices something strange in the crowd. He wonders if someone has died. However, his companion laughs at him and reminds him that the Devil's Palace's competition of the 10 has not started yet. The bearded man again asks who that young man is, because he looks like an undertaker. Everyone's attention turns to a young man walking slowly through the crowd. This young man is named Bo Unsal. As he walks, Unsal is thinking about his grandfather, and he believes that this moment is only the beginning of his journey. He remembers how his grandfather gave him the name Bo Unsal after finding him abandoned in a snowy field. Unsal continues to think about the past. He remembers how he learned the job of burying the dead from his grandfather, who was also an undertaker. He recalls telling his grandfather that one body they were burying belonged to a master of a sword style that focused on extreme speed. He explained that he figured this out by observing the body's left leg muscles, especially the front part of the calf. Those muscles were very well developed, which is a common trait of people who practice that fast sword style. His grandfather smiled when he heard this. He was impressed by Unsal's sharp observation and praised him. He told Unsal that he was a gifted undertaker sent from heaven. Unsal then remembers how hard his life had been. People hated him because of his job, and they looked down on him. Even so, he was happy because he had his grandfather by his side. His grandfather supported him through every hardship, until the day everything changed. One night, his grandfather noticed someone outside the house. He sighed and said that good people never come looking for you, and when someone does come, they are never good people. While Unsal was asleep, his grandfather woke him up and suggested they play their usual game of pretending to be dead to see who could do it better. Then his grandfather promised that if Unsal did well this time, he would buy him the clothes and the sword he had always wanted. Unsal's face immediately lit up with happiness. His grandfather then asked him to endure and stay still until sunrise. This request surprised Unsal, but he agreed. After that, his grandfather left the house with his sword in hand. Outside, a mysterious man was waiting for him. The man spoke to Unsal's grandfather and mocked him, saying that he had hidden himself well, just like a rat. Then the man revealed the grandfather's true identity by calling him Boni, the seven-branched demonic blade. The grandfather calmly replied that he had not heard that name in a very long time. The mysterious man scolded him for abandoning his position as the deputy master of the palace and living such a pitiful life doing lowly work like burying corpses. The grandfather corrected him, saying that he did not choose this life because it was miserable. He chose it to pay for his sins. He then offered his own life and asked the mysterious man to kill him somewhere else, so that innocent people would not be harmed. The mysterious man laughed coldly at this request. Still, he agreed to move to another place and warned the grandfather not to even think about escaping. Nearby, Unsal was hiding and watching. He let out a sigh of relief, thinking that the danger was finally gone. But soon, his body began to shake. He felt that he could not endure it anymore. Even though he really wanted the official uniform and the sword his grandfather promised, the cold night air was too painful to bear. Unsal finally came out of his hiding place. He wondered where his grandfather was, because his grandfather usually came back to wait for him after their game ended. He guessed that law enforcement officers had summoned his grandfather once again. He felt angry at those men who did not treat undertakers like human beings. As Unsal moved forward, he was suddenly met with a terrifying sight. He ran as fast as he could and found his grandfather lying on the ground. Blood was flowing from his grandfather's eyes. Unsal screamed his grandfather's name and rushed to him in panic. He asked him what had happened, but his grandfather could only apologize softly. The grandfather tells Unsal that his time has come. He tries to tell him not to continue the job of burying the dead, but before he can finish his words, he coughs up blood. Unsal begs him to stop talking and save his strength, but his grandfather insists that he must listen carefully. He tells Unsal to never think about revenge. Unsal cries loudly and refuses to accept this. He says that he can never forgive the people who did this to his grandfather. He tells him that he would rather die and go with him. He reminds his grandfather of the words he always used to say, that there is no difference between hell and this world. Unsal says he would rather be in hell with his grandfather than stay alive in this world without him. As his final wish, the grandfather asks Unsal to go far away and live safely. He tells Unsal that he was very happy during the time they spent together. After saying this, he takes his last breath and his body collapses to the ground. Unsal's face is covered with tears as he stares at him, unable to believe that this is really happening. After some time passes, Unsal stands in front of his grandfather's body, which he has already prepared for burial. He gently touches his grandfather's face and realizes that his request to not seek revenge was meant to protect him. However, Unsal decides that this is one promise he cannot keep. He carefully examines his grandfather's wounds. He notices that both of his arms were cut off at the same time. The attack was done in a rare downward cutting motion. In the middle of that move, the attacker changed the technique and stabbed his grandfather's eyes. From this, Unsal realizes that the sword technique used is from the demonic sect. He identifies it as the Dhyana Yoga technique. Unsal then checks his grandfather's back and finds 93 marks left by hidden weapons. This tells him that the attacker did not have help from others. Instead, the attacker used a special tool that could release hundreds of hidden weapons at once. Finally, Unsal notices a strange color under his grandfather's tongue and fingernails. From this, he understands that his grandfather was poisoned. This poison causes the flesh and blood to rot. Based on all these clues, Unsal creates a clear image of the killer. The killer is someone from the demonic sect, has mastered the Dhyana Yoga technique, owns a high-quality hidden weapon, and uses deadly poison that destroys flesh and blood. Unsal believes that there cannot be many people who match all these conditions. He looks at his grandfather's body with firm determination and swears that he will find the killer, no matter what it takes. The story then returns to the present. Unsal arrives at the registration office of the Devil's Palace and writes his name as Bo Unsal of the Ganyang clan. The staff members laugh at him. They wonder what kind of poor countryside clan the Ganyang clan is. They also mock him, saying that he probably got scared when he saw the consent form that requires giving up control over one's own body. One of the employees rudely tells Unsal to either press his fingerprint or leave. Instead, Unsal bites his thumb until it bleeds. The employees stare at him in shock. Unsal thinks to himself that the moment his grandfather died, his life completely broke apart. He feels that he has nothing left except the road of revenge. With that thought, he presses his bloody thumb onto the registration paper. He believes that this competition will be the first step toward his revenge. After this, the long history of conflict in the Murmur world is explained. For many years, the Orthodox and unorthodox sects have fought for control. The Orthodox sects, who claim to stand for justice, are led by the Murmur Alliance. On the other side, the unorthodox sects are centered around the Devil's Palace, which believes only in strength and power. For a long time, these two sides remained in balance. However, the Orthodox sects wanted more power. To gain an advantage, they created 18 martial masters known as the Greatest Good Masters. In response to this threat, the Devil's Palace decided to increase their own strength as well. Their plan was to create 10 demon lords. This plan involved selecting 10 talented geniuses, no matter their background, and teaching them the martial arts of the 10 demonic sections. This offer attracted many young people, and they all gathered at the Devil's Palace. Unsal stands among the crowd and feels a powerful presence coming from many of them. He believes that someone among these people may be connected to his grandfather's killer. Because the killer is a martial arts master far beyond Unsal's current understanding, Unsal realizes something important. If he wants to take revenge on someone like that, he must become a powerful martial arts master himself. Since Unsal has no sect affiliation and has never learned martial arts before, becoming one of the 10 demon lords is the only way for him to gain strength quickly. There is no other path open to him. Suddenly, the applicants turn their heads in shock. A majestic man with thick white hair and glowing red eyes appears. He speaks loudly and introduces himself as the head instructor, Hu Ryanong. Everyone immediately recognizes him as the Bloody Gold Dagger, a famous and terrifying figure. Head instructor Hu Ryanong continues speaking. He explains that this place exists to discover the greatest geniuses from all demonic sections. Only those who can pass every test prepared for them will earn the right to become candidates for the 10 demon lords. He then announces the first test. In this test, test, fighters from the Devil's Palace will examine the physical fitness of the applicants. The test begins. The examiners touch the applicants' muscles and bones with their hands. Many participants feel confused because they were expecting a match or a real fight, not this kind of inspection. Unsol watches carefully and notices that those who pass the examination are sent forward to the next area. When it is Unsol's turn, one examiner steps toward him. As soon as the examiner touches Unsol's arm, his face changes. He looks shocked and filled with disappointment. In his mind, he thinks that this young man is already finished. He is surprised that someone with Unsol's weak body even dared to apply. The examiner also senses a clear and intense killing intent coming from Unsol, something that cannot be mistaken. Even so, he decides that he cannot allow Unsol to pass the test. Unsol is not surprised by the result. He already knew that everything he had learned so far was related only to handling corpses. He knew very well that he could not pass a martial arts test based on physical strength. Still, he believes that this is not the end for him. After the first test ends, one of the failed applicants shouts angrily. He protests that the test is completely unfair. He asks what the point of holding a competition is if physical fitness is the only thing that matters. The head instructor responds calmly but firmly. He explains that muscles and bones are the most important foundation for learning martial arts. He says that this competition exists to find talented people from all regions. Then he scolds the man, saying that he has no right to complain when he cannot even meet the most basic standards. The head instructor then tells everyone not to worry. He announces that the second test will be different. In this test, he will personally select people who can still learn martial arts well, even if their bodies are weak. Without wasting any time, he declares the start of the second test. He orders everyone who failed the first test to fight each other until only one person remains alive. Everyone is shocked. They cannot believe this is truly the test. They wonder how they can be told to kill each other when they all came here on the same side. Fear spreads through the group. However, one contestant smiles. He thinks that this situation works in his favor, since someone must die anyway. He turns his eyes toward Unsol and a red-haired young man. He lifts his massive sword, deciding to start with them. He charges forward and shouts for his target to die. In an instant, blood sprays into the air. The attacker, named Waiwen Chung, successfully strikes. He kills the red-haired young man with great skill. This brutal act horrifies and terrifies the remaining contestants. Unsol carefully watches everything and tries to analyze what just happened. He notices that Waiwen Chung narrowly avoided the ribs and stabbed straight into the heart. From this, Unsol realizes that even though the man's body is not strong, his reflexes and speed are extremely sharp. Waiwen Chung stands proudly, boasting about his kill. He shouts and challenges anyone else who wants to die to step forward and face him. From afar, one official comments that Waiwen Chung is acting decisively but lacks common sense. The head instructor agrees and says that this place is filled with useless fools. One of the examiners observes the scene quietly. He thinks that in fights like this, showing too much strength only makes someone a target. Still, he believes that what just happened will push others into action. Soon enough, fear and chaos spread among the contestants. Panicked screams fill the air as they begin attacking each other at random. Watching this, the head instructor calmly remarks that these young men are clearly not used to facing death. The fighting between the trainees becomes even more intense. They start killing each other without mercy. The head instructor calmly says that when people face death, their senses become dull and paralyzed. However, he and his assistant soon realize that this does not apply to everyone. It becomes clear that not all of the participants are foolish. Unsol and one other fighter remain calm and clear-minded even in the middle of the bloody chaos. Unsol carefully watches what is happening around him and thinks that the others are fools because they let their fear of death control their actions. He thinks about the situation calmly and realizes something important. The head instructor did not order them to kill everyone. He ordered them to survive until only one person remained. That means survival is the true goal, not killing. Unsol becomes confident. He believes that if he stays calm, thinks clearly, and acts carefully, he can survive. He makes a firm vow to live, no matter what it takes. Suddenly, one of the fighters approaches Unsol. The man thinks Unsol looks weak and pathetic and assumes that he has been hiding this whole time. Unsol notices thin, precise sword marks on the bodies around him and understands that they were made by a slender sword. The fighter decides that he will kill Unsol himself. He attacks Unsol with a strange weapon, but Unsol avoids it smoothly and strikes the box the man is carrying instead. The attacker laughs at him and mocks him. He asks what use the box on Unsol's back has and jokes about whether Unsol is a traveling merchant. Unsol does not respond. He picks up a piece piece of cloth from the ground. For a brief moment, he remembers his grandfather and the red cloth he once gave him. His red eyes shine with anger and strong resolve. The attacker notices the strange tools in Unsol's hands and sarcastically asks what he plans to do with such a weak and flimsy sword. Before the attacker can finish his move, the other calm fighter suddenly jumps in. With a single sword strike, he kills the attacker. Then he tells Unsol that there is no need to thank him. He says that having a pathetic person like Unsol nearby actually helps, because it distracts enemies and makes things easier for him. He adds that Unsol has sharp insight, but it is obvious that he has never learned martial arts. He says that he could kill someone like Unsol whenever he wants. From a distance, the head instructor watches this exchange. His attention is drawn to the young man's sword. He immediately recognizes it as the Sword of Annihilation, the legendary weapon of the Black Soul, who was known as the strongest wandering swordsman. The assistant explains that the young man's name is Nyeon Wong Gang. It is said that he discovered the Black Soul's secret manual and sword in a hidden valley. However, because he trained only by reading the manual, his techniques are not fully refined, and his movements have many openings. The assistant continues, saying that Nyeon Wong Gang is currently the only disciple of the Black Soul. Even though his physical strength is not great, he is still a strong candidate to become one of the 10 demon lords. He might even win this test. The head instructor agrees. He says that although Nyeon Wong Gang is still inexperienced and not yet worthy of carrying the Sword of Annihilation, there does not seem to be anyone stronger than him among the participants, unless something completely unexpected happens. After a long and brutal battle, only 2 people remain alive in the training ground, which is now covered in corpses. They are Nyeon Wong Gang and Unsol. Nyeon Wong Gang stands in the arena and expresses his surprise that Unsol managed to survive until the end. He turns toward Unsol and challenges him. He says that if Unsol kills him, he will become a candidate to be one of the 10 demon lords. He invites Unsol to attack him. Unsol looks at him calmly. He thinks that even though Nyeon Wong Gang is the strongest person here, he has already figured out his weakness. Unsol is confident that he can defeat him. He has studied Nyeon Wong Gang's fighting style by observing the bodies left behind. Nyeon Wong Gang suddenly leaps forward and mockingly says that he will test Unsol's abilities a little. He then launches a fierce and violent attack. Unsol skillfully avoids his continuous strikes and only receives shallow, surface wounds. Nyeon Wong Gang laughs at him and says that Unsol is only good at clumsy dodging. He adds that it is impressive that Unsol has managed to survive for this long. The head instructor and his assistant carefully watch the fight. They notice that even though Unsol looks like he is being beaten badly and helplessly, he is actually moving his body at the very last moment every time an attack comes. Because of this, he avoids receiving any fatal wounds. The head instructor suddenly realizes something shocking. He understands that Unsol memorized Nyeon Wong Gang's attack patterns by closely examining the corpses left behind earlier. He is amazed by Unsol's incredible power of observation and insight. Even though his body is covered in blood, Unsol calmly speaks to Nyeon Wong Gang. He tells him that his sword techniques are pathetic. He adds that after throwing so many attacks, all Wong Gang has managed to do is cut his flesh. These words shock Nyeon Wong Gang deeply. The instructors are also stunned by Unsol's boldness and courage in provoking such a powerful opponent. They realize that while dodging attacks is impressive, launching a proper counterattack is a completely different challenge. This is especially true for someone like Unsol, whose slender body makes it very hard to deliver a strong and effective strike. Nyeon Wong Gang becomes furious after hearing Unsol's words. He says that he originally planned to let Unsol live a little longer, but because of his arrogance, he has decided to kill him quickly instead. He shouts angrily and prepares to unleash a finishing blow. Unsol sees the attack coming and understands that this will be his only chance. He recalls what he learned while studying the corpses. He noticed that Nyeon Wong Gang's finishing attacks always target vital points, especially the heart and the head. He had figured out that whenever Wong Gang fights with the intent to kill, his sword naturally moves toward the upper part of the opponent's body. As expected, when Nyeon Wong Gang rushes toward him and aims for his head, Unsol quickly lowers his body and dodges the strike. At the same time, he launches his counterattack toward Wong Gang's neck, using the weakness he had discovered. In the middle of the fight, Unsol remembers his knowledge of a vital point called the Tanu point. This is a weak spot that is extremely difficult to strengthen, even for martial arts masters. He remembers that if even a child strikes this point with full strength, an adult can instantly lose consciousness. Using this knowledge, Unsol makes his decisive move. He directs his small sword straight toward Nyeon Wong Gang's neck. Nyeon Wong Gang stands still for a moment as blood flows from his wound. Then his body collapses to the ground. In that moment, Unsol becomes the victor of the duel. Completely exhausted and covered in blood, Unsol wonders if everything is finally over. The instructors watch the scene in complete shock. The assistant comments that what just happened was a completely unexpected outcome. The head instructor speaks next. He says that he is disappointed because he had high expectations for the sword art of the Black Soul. Still, he raises his voice and announces that Bo Unsol has passed the second test. As soon as Unsol hears this, his consciousness fades. He falls into his memories and loses awareness. In his dream, he sees his grandfather calling out to him. Unsol runs toward him happily and tells him where he is now. But when he reaches him, his grandfather says that he cannot see him. Suddenly, the dream turns into a nightmare. Unsol sees his grandfather's disfigured face, and it becomes clear that his grandfather truly cannot see him at all. Terrified, Unsol wakes up. He opens his eyes and finds himself in a strange place. He is surrounded by young fighters of different ages. Unsol realizes that he fainted because he lost too much blood. He then notices that his serious injuries have already been treated and that he feels no pain anymore. From this, he guesses that a famous and skilled doctor, worthy of the Devil's Palace, must have healed him. Unsol looks around at the others who survived. He notices that they all have strong and well-built bodies, and he recognizes some of their faces. He concludes that these are the people who passed the first test. He feels their looks of disdain directed at him, but he understands that this reaction is natural. Soon, the door of the ship opens, and everyone is ordered to get off. One of the officials announces that they have arrived at the next testing area, called Hell Island. The candidates follow the official to the dark and frightening island. There, the official points toward a group of caves and tells them that these caves will be where they sleep. He orders them to put aside their old clothes and weapons and wear the new clothes and swords that have been prepared for them. He also tells them that they are free to choose any cave they like. One of the survivors says that he has already found a cave. He says that it is much more comfortable and suitable than he expected. At the same time, a fight breaks out between two candidates over who gets to use a certain cave. Before the situation gets worse, the others step in and stop the fight. Unsol watches all of this quietly. He thinks to himself that these people clearly do not understand what truly happened during the second test. They look too relaxed and satisfied with themselves. He also notices that many of them are wearing very expensive clothes. This makes him wonder if most of them come from powerful and prestigious clans. Unsol reflects on the second test and comes to a conclusion. He believes that the true purpose of that test was to eliminate people who could be easily killed. While he is thinking, the official in charge of assigning the caves walks over to him. The official scolds him for being slow and tells him to hurry up and make a choice. In his mind, the official thinks that Unsol's sharp eyes caught his attention earlier. He admits that he never expected Unsol to survive, and now he is curious to see what kind of decision Unsol will make next. Unsol points toward a dark, narrow, and unappealing cave. He calmly announces that he has chosen that one. The official laughs and mocks him. He says that the cave suits Unsol's shabby clothes and that just looking at it is unpleasant. However, deep inside, the official is impressed. He thinks that Unsol is a true genius. He knows that even though the cave's entrance looks small and dirty, the inside is actually wide enough for proper training. Also, the narrow entrance makes it easy to defend against enemies. Most people avoid this cave because of how it looks from the outside, but Unsol was able to judge the situation correctly. The official then tells Unsol to prepare for the next stage. After everyone changes into the new uniforms, the official begins explaining the next task. He says that Hell Island has 10 different training facilities. Each facility teaches the martial arts of one of the 10 demonic sects. He explains that the candidates are free to learn from all of them or focus on just one. They are also free to decide their daily schedule. They can sleep, rest, train, play, or practice martial arts however they like. This shocks Unsol. After experiencing the cruelty of the second test, he finds it hard to believe that they are now being allowed to train peacefully on their own. Soon, the survivors begin discussing which martial art they should learn first. Most of them agree that the Fire Rain Sword sect is the strongest, based on what they have heard. Everyone rushes toward that training hall. Unsol watches them and thinks that he has also heard that the Fire Rain Sword sect is the strongest among the demonic sections. Learning their martial arts would definitely be useful. However, he decides that this is not the right path for him. Since he has never learned martial arts before, he does not need to start with the strongest techniques. Unsol thinks carefully about what he truly needs right now and chooses a different direction. He walks toward another martial arts training facility. Soon, he arrives at an old and broken-looking building. He recognizes it as the Wandering Beast Pavilion. He remembers that the reputation of this pavilion has fallen so much that it is barely counted among among the 10 demonic sects anymore. The only reason it still exists is because, in the past, it produced many of the strongest martial arts masters of their time. He also remembers that his grandfather once told him stories about this place. Unsol decides that this is where he will train. As he moves forward, he suddenly notices that the ground in front of him begins to move. Without warning, a man's head pops out of the ground. The man introduces himself as Saw Wu, the master of the secret wing of the Wandering Beast Pavilion. He asks Unsol if he came here hoping to become one of the 10 demon lords. Unsol stands respectfully in front of him and answers honestly. He says that he has come to learn the martial arts of the Wandering Beast Pavilion. Saw Wu looks Unsol up and down, then bursts out laughing. He tells Unsol to leave immediately if he does not want to die early. He clearly says that he has no intention of teaching martial arts, especially to someone who looks as fragile and weak as Unsol. Unsol replies with confidence. He says that he has heard that learning the martial arts of the Wandering Beast Pavilion gives a person the ability to survive any situation. Saw Wu scoffs at his words. He says that he is surprised Unsol even knows about a martial art that is close to disappearing from the world. Saw Wu then warns Unsol seriously. He tells him that even the greatest geniuses find it extremely hard to learn the martial arts of the Wandering Beast Pavilion. He explains that their training starts by changing and modifying the body itself. With Unsol's current weak physical condition, he says that Unsol would not even survive one day. After saying this, Saw Wu orders him to leave, believing that Unsol now understands the danger. However, instead of leaving, Unsol suddenly kneels down completely. He lowers his body and presses his forehead to the ground in a deep bow. Saw Wu is shocked by this and asks him what he thinks he is doing. Unsol replies calmly that since Saw Wu has agreed to teach him, the only thing he can do is show respect to his new master. Saw Wu calls him a stubborn fool, but after a moment, he finally gives in. He agrees to teach Unsol. Saw Wu then fully emerges from the ground and tells Unsol not to misunderstand. He says that he is only teaching him because the Devil's Palace ordered him to do so. He introduces himself properly again as Saw Wu, the master of the Wandering Beast Pavilion, and tells Unsol to call him Master Saw from now on. Unsol tries to introduce himself, but Saw Wu interrupts him and says that names do not matter. He tells him that he is simply trainee number 1. Without wasting any time, Saw Wu begins the training immediately. In an instant, Unsol is surrounded by complete darkness. He realizes that he cannot see anything at all. Saw Wu explains that he has temporarily sealed Unsol's vision using the secret techniques of the Wandering Beast Pavilion. He tells Unsol that this is a necessary step to learn the Wandering Beast path. This is a basic technique that sharpens all senses and grants beast-like reflexes. Saw Wu explains that their martial arts are different from others because they change greatly depending on the person who learns them. Because of this, mastering the basic technique is extremely difficult. Over time, fewer and fewer people were able to endure this training, which is why the pavilion has fallen into its current broken and abandoned state. Still, Saw Wu assures Unsol that if he can master this technique, he will gain the heightened senses of a wandering beast. Then, with a mocking smile, he adds that most people die long before reaching that level. Saw Wu tells Unsol that he should get used to the darkness within about 1 hour. He says he will return after that and then leaves. Unsol is left alone in complete darkness. He notices that his other senses have not suddenly become sharper like he expected. He realizes that 1 hour is a very long time and that he must adapt as fast as possible. He thinks about how countless fighters are competing to become one of the 10 demon lords. If someone attacks him while he is like this, he would be completely helpless. At that moment, an attacker silently drops down from above. Acting purely on instinct, Unsol dodges the attack and falls to the ground. In that instant, Unsol realizes something important. Without his vision, balance has become the most important thing for survival. Later that night, Saw Wu returns. He thinks mockingly that the young man must be completely lost in the darkness by now. But when he observes Unsol's training, he is surprised. He finds Unsol's method very unusual. Saw Wu thinks that most trainees simply wait patiently after losing their sight, hoping their other senses will slowly awaken. But Unsol does the opposite. He moves his body violently, imagining invisible enemies around him and training against them. Unsol moves smoothly and naturally in the darkness. Saw Wu realizes that this aggressive and active approach is the reason Unsol adapted so quickly. He notices that Unsol has already become comfortable in the dark. Saw Wu then challenges him and tells him to try dodging his sword. 3 days pass. For 3 days straight, Unsol continues his intense training with Saw Wu, even in the pouring rain. During one moment, Saw Wu suddenly attacks and strikes Unsol in the stomach with the hilt of his sword. Unsol fails to dodge this attack. Solwo reflects on this and thinks that 3 days have already passed. He believes that by now, Unsol should be questioning his training method. However, Unsol accepts everything without complaint or doubt. Solwo stops attacking and asks him why he is not curious about how to avoid attacks or about the theory behind the training. Unsol answers honestly. He says that he remembers Solwo saying that the true essence of the Wandering Beast Pavilion's martial arts is to reach understanding on one's own. Because of that, he believed there must be a reason behind everything he was doing. Solwo is surprised by this answer. He admits that Unsol is right. With renewed excitement, he tells Unsol to continue training. As the training continues, Unsol reaches a new level of awareness. He begins to feel as if he can sense and see the path of an incoming sword even without using his eyes. Unsol soon realizes that even though he can sense the attack, he will not be able to dodge the next strike in time. So instead of dodging, he decides to block it. Unsol manages to block Solwo's attack successfully. This surprises Solwo greatly, and he wonders how Unsol was able to block an attack that was completely silent. After only 3 days of intense training, Unsol finally collapses to the ground, completely exhausted. He admits to himself that he could not even block the attack properly. Solwo walks over to him and offers him a drink from a bamboo flask. Unsol accepts it politely and thanks him. When Unsol drinks it, he is shocked. It is not water. He feels a powerful energy rushing through his body, as if all the blood he had lost before is returning to him at once. Solwo tells him that this is Superior Spring spiritual water, something he has saved his entire life. He says that he does not feel like he is wasting it by giving it to Unsol. Inside his heart, Solwo is filled with excitement. He thinks that he has finally found the genius he has been waiting for his entire life. Later, Unsol's training continues. Solwo challenges him again, telling him to try blocking his attacks. Solwo launches strong and continuous sword strikes at Unsol. Unsol struggles greatly and barely manages to dodge the attacks. Suddenly, Solwo appears behind him and criticizes his poor defensive performance. Then, without warning, Solwo stops attacking. Unsol is left gasping for breath, confused about why the attack suddenly stopped. At that moment, Solwo bursts into loud laughter. He announces that he has finally found what he has been searching for all this time. At the same instant, the seal on Unsol's eyes is released, and his vision returns. Solwo calls Unsol by his full name and tells him to forget about becoming one of the 10 demon lords. Instead, he invites Unsol to become an official disciple of the Wandering Beast Pavilion. He promises that if Unsol accepts, he will make him one of the 10 strongest martial arts masters in the demonic sect within 10 years. Unsol carefully thinks about this offer. He realizes that Solwo is most likely not lying. However, he remembers that his grandfather's killer is an extremely powerful martial artist. Because of that, he concludes that he cannot be satisfied with learning only the martial arts of the Wandering Beast Pavilion. With firm resolve, Unsol announces his decision. He says that he will become a demon lord. Solwo laughs mockingly at his ambition. He tells Unsol to forget such a goal if he plans to learn the martial arts of all 10 demonic sections. He explains that this is impossible, even for someone as talented as the greatest heavenly demon emperor. Solwo explains further. He says that each martial art matches a specific body type and energy flow. No matter how gifted a person is, they cannot learn more than 2 or 3 different martial arts paths. He adds that focusing on a single martial art is the fastest way to become truly strong. Unsol apologizes for being stubborn. Solwo wonders silently if there is any way to change Unsol's mind. In the end, Solwo sighs and gives in. He agrees to teach Unsol another martial art. Unsol is shocked by this decision. He says that he has only learned the basic techniques of the Wandering Beast Pavilion so far. At that moment, Solwo suddenly launches a fast and powerful attack. This time, Unsol successfully blocks it on his own. Solwo then reveals the truth. He explains that the martial arts of the Wandering Beast Pavilion are not passed down only through explanations or written theories. He tells Unsol that he has actually been practicing the true wild beast path this entire time. Unsol finally understands. All the sword attacks that Solwo used against him were not just training exercises. They were the real forms of the wild beast path itself. Unsol bows deeply and thanks his master sincerely. Solwo immediately rejects his thanks and says that he was only following the orders of the Devil's Palace. Unsol insists and reminds him of the precious elixir he gave him. He promises that he will never forget his kindness. Solwo tells him to forget about it. He explains that in the martial arts world of Yonghu, forgetting favors and grudges is often the best way to survive. After a brief silence, Unsol tells Solwa that he will be leaving. Solwa watches Unsol walk away from a distance. He feels amazed and wonders where such a talented young man came from. In his heart, he believes that a bloody storm will soon sweep across Hell Island. As Unsol walks away, he reflects on his growth. Through learning the wandering beast path, his senses have become extremely sharp, allowing him to perceive danger and movement far better than before. However, Unsol soon notices that staying in this constant state of sharp awareness is extremely exhausting, even when he is doing nothing at all. He realizes that if this continues, he will not be able to rest properly. Because of this, he decides that he must learn how to control his senses and suppress them as much as possible. Unsol closes his eyes and begins to focus deeply. He tries to control his senses carefully, as if he were stopping a single drop of water from falling. After a short while, he opens his eyes again. He feels that this level of control is enough for now. Next, Unsol takes out a map and studies it carefully. He thinks to himself that the Devil's Palace will not keep all the trainees on Hell Island forever just to train endlessly. He realizes that their time is limited and that it may soon come to an end. If that is true, then he has no other choice but to act quickly. Unsol decides to go to the strongest sect among the 10 demonic sects, the Fire Rain Sword sect. This sect was founded by the Fire Rain Sword Emperor, Jukwawan, who was once a rival of the greatest heavenly demon emperor 700 years ago. When Unsol arrives at the Fire Rain Sword sect, he is stunned by what he sees. Compared to the simple and worn-down Wandering Beast Pavilion, this place looks like a grand palace. As he approaches the entrance, a man opens the door and asks who could be visiting at such a time. Unsol quickly realizes that this man is a martial arts instructor of the sect. He bows respectfully and says that he has come to learn their martial arts. The instructor tells him to follow and explains along the way that the Fire Rain Sword arts are the most detailed and advanced among all demonic martial arts. However, he also says that they take the most time to master. The instructor adds that the trainees who arrived half a month earlier have already passed the beginner test and moved on to the intermediate test. He then asks Unsol why he is so late. Unsol calmly replies that he spent the past half-month learning martial arts at the Wandering Beast Pavilion. The instructor is shocked by this answer and asks if Unsol means that he learned the Wandering Beast path. Unsol confirms it. Inside his mind, the instructor thinks that although Unsol is clearly talented, it is impossible for him to have mastered the Wandering Beast path in just half a month. He assumes that Solwa must have gotten annoyed and sent him away quickly. Thinking this, he decides there is nothing more to question. The instructor then introduces himself. He says his name is Jean Gak and that he is responsible for the beginner test. He tells Unsol to call him teacher. Jean Gak then asks Unsol if he truly plans to learn the Fire Rain Sword art, suggesting that it might be better for him to try another test instead. Unsol thanks him for his concern but firmly states that he wants to learn the martial arts of the Fire Rain Sword sect. Jean Gak agrees and takes out a large scroll. He explains that it contains the introductory form and practical method of the 13 forms of Fire Rain. He tells Unsol to study it carefully and practice on his own. Unsol stares at the scroll with a confused expression. He wonders what he is supposed to do with it. Seeing this, Jean Gak turns around in disapproval and asks if Unsol is saying that he cannot read a sword manual. Unsol honestly admits that he cannot, explaining that he has never learned swordsmanship before coming here. Jean Gak freezes in shock. He turns back and asks Unsol again to confirm whether it is really true that he has never learned swordsmanship in his entire life. He recalls that Unsol's records do show that he has only used raw Fire Rain energy so far. Even during the second test, he did not use any specific sword style. Still, Jean Gak finds it hard to believe that Unsol cannot even perform the most basic sword fundamentals, such as sword steps. At the same time, Jean Gak remembers Unsol's incredible observation skills, fast reflexes during the second test, and the sharp judgment he showed when choosing his cave. He suddenly realizes that if Unsol has reached such a level while being a complete beginner, then his potential will be terrifying if he is properly taught. With this realization, Jean Gak changes his approach. He tells Unsol that even if he cannot understand the sword movements, he can still read words. He then asks him to read what is written on the scroll. Unsol reads aloud, complete relaxation of the body and smooth flow as one. He then repeats the first part, focusing on relaxing the body. Jean Gak explains that this means Unsol must fully relax his body and move flexibly when using swordsmanship, especially keeping his torso and waist loose and relaxed. Unsol tries to follow the instructions. As he does so, he bends his body into a very strange and awkward position. Seeing this, Jin Gak thinks to himself how ironic it is that he has to teach such basic things in a place meant to select the 10 demon lords. He tells Unsol to stand properly again and personally corrects his posture. Jin Gak explains that when Unsol's body is tense, his torso also becomes stiff. He tells him that he must first calm his mind and relax it, because only then can his body move smoothly in one continuous flow. Unsol listens carefully and responds immediately. His posture stabilizes almost at once. Jin Gak is surprised by how quickly Unsol understands and fixes his stance. With a satisfied smile, he tells him that his stance is now acceptable and that he will immediately teach him the 13 forms of fire rain. Jin Gak begins explaining the movements one by one. Unsol copies them with incredible accuracy and speed. Seeing this, Jin Gak becomes certain that his suspicions were correct. This boy is truly talented. After the explanation is finished, Jin Gak tells Unsol that he must now imagine an enemy standing in front of him and use the 13 forms of fire rain. He explains that this is the test to qualify for the intermediate hall and that its purpose is to see the sword intent hidden within his basic movements. Unsol realizes that the opportunity he has been waiting for has arrived much sooner than expected. He understands that he must prove himself right here and right now. He closes his eyes and focuses deeply, imagining an enemy he must defeat. Then he suddenly opens his eyes and releases the first technique of the 13 forms of fire rain, the unparalleled cyclone. Jin Gak watches him closely with great interest. Unsol continues, performing the second and third techniques, known as floating misty clouds. Jin Gak is stunned and wonders if what he is seeing is truly the fire rain sword forms. He remembers that the floating misty clouds technique is supposed to be soft, smooth, and graceful, like clouds drifting and mist spreading. However, the way Unsol uses it feels sharp, violent, and deadly. Jin Gak is shocked and wonders if Unsol is consciously changing the movements. Altering the basic form of a sword technique that has been passed down for generations is something only a great master can do. He notices that Unsol's modified movements are filled with intense killing intent, as if he were facing the enemy who killed his master or parents. He thinks about how the Fire Rain Sword sect, which is considered an orthodox sword path, is being twisted into such a fierce and brutal style. He wonders what kind of life Unsol must have lived to carry such deep hatred. At the same time, Unsol himself feels something strange. He notices that the flow at his fingertips is changing the sword paths exactly as he wishes. He wonders if this is because of the wandering beast path. He realizes that the more he uses the fire rain forms, the sharper the senses he gained from the wandering beast path become. He considers fully combining the two styles, but then hesitates. He understands that if he does that, the result will no longer be the 13 forms of fire rain required for the test, but an entirely new sword style. Realizing this, Unsol forces himself to hurry and return to the original basic sword movements. Suddenly, the image of the enemy in his mind becomes much clearer. His body freezes when he realizes that the enemy he is imagining is the bastard who killed his grandfather. Unsol's anger explodes. He charges forward with all his strength and unleashes the seventh technique of the 13 forms of fire rain, the heart of the four seas. He launches a powerful and violent attack, but the opponent dodges it. Unsol realizes that this imaginary enemy is extremely fast, faster than anyone he has ever fought before. Then he imagines the enemy counterattacking him. Unsol decides that he cannot allow the enemy even a single chance to strike. He resolves to use all the remaining techniques at once. Pouring all his strength into his movements, he releases a series of fierce and destructive attacks. However, the enemy blocks every single strike and then counterattacks. In Unsol's imagination, his opponent cuts off both of his hands. He is unable to dodge the attack or block it in any way. When the imagined battle ends, Unsol stands there gasping for breath. His body is trembling, and all of his strength has been completely drained. Jin Gak watches Unsol and thinks that, in the end, Unsol was defeated by his enemy. However, he still walks up to him and tells him that he has passed the test. Unsol looks at him with a confused expression. Jin Gak explains that the purpose of the elementary hall test is not about winning or losing. Instead, it is meant to check the trainees' understanding of the sword and whether they can properly use the 13 forms of fire rain in a real combat situation. He assures Unsol that he has clearly proven both of these things. Jin Gak then returns Unsol's sword to him and tells him that his execution of the fire rain forms was outstanding. He invites Unsol to move on to the intermediate hall. Unsol reflects on instructor Jin Gak and realizes that it must have been frustrating for him to teach someone who knew absolutely nothing about swordsmanship. Even so, Jin Gak patiently taught him everything step by step. Feeling grateful, Unsol sincerely thanks instructor Jean Gak for all the time and effort he spent on him. Jean Gak smiles warmly and encourages him to work even harder in the future. Before Unsol leaves, Jean Gak gives him a warning. He tells him that his sword carries an extremely strong killing intent and advises him to be careful not to let that intent control him. Unsol bows deeply in respect and then leaves the hall. After Unsol is gone, Jean Gak finally realizes that Unsol had been telling the truth all along and that he really did learn the wandering beast path in just 2 weeks. He thinks that because of Unsol's frightening learning speed, he reached the intermediate hall much faster than expected. He admits to himself that at first, he was unsure whether Unsol could even make it to the intermediate hall, but now he is completely certain of his potential. As Unsol opens the doors to the next hall, Jean Gak thinks about the instructor of the intermediate hall, Chun Wong Gang. He believes that although Wong Gang might reject Unsol at first, he will eventually become deeply interested in him. Unsol enters the intermediate hall, and instructor Wong Gang immediately notices him. He speaks to him, saying that it seems Unsol has just passed the beginner's hall. He then mocks him, adding that if it took him more than 20 days to understand 30 forms of Huawu, then he is simply wasting his time here. Unsol explains calmly that he was late because he spent the first 15 days training in the Naya Pavilion. From these words, Wong Gang assumes that Unsol is trying to say that his progress was not slow at all. He thinks with contempt that Unsol must be one of those people who gave up while trying to master the difficult beast path. Wong Gang orders Unsol to sit down, clearly doubting his ability to keep up with the other trainees. Wong Gang then begins the lesson. He explains that the thunderous fire rain sword relies on extremely fast movements and that those who lack proper sword skill will end up injuring themselves. He adds that this martial art, like the 13 forms of fire rain, is difficult to use in real combat. Even so, it is still a basic martial art that everyone must learn at this stage. He emphasizes that their main goal is not victory, but improving their swordsmanship. After the explanation, Wong Gang calls a trainee named Bio Hanxiang forward and tells him to choose an opponent for a duel. Hanxiang asks if he can choose anyone he wants, and the instructor confirms that he can. Hanxiang then points directly at Unsol. Wong Gang tries to object, but Hanxiang reminds him that he clearly said anyone could be chosen. This angers Wong Gang, and he scolds Hanxiang, calling him a fool. He asks how he expects to test his sword against someone who has just finished beginner-level training and orders him to choose someone else. At that moment, Unsol steps forward and says that he does not mind fighting. He explains that he learned swordsmanship from instructor Jean Gak and believes that he will improve faster by testing his sword against others. Wong Gang thinks that Unsol is merely trying to protect his pride despite his limited skills. Still, he publicly agrees, saying that knowing one's own limits is an important ability. He adds that he hopes Unsol is skilled enough to eventually reach the advanced hall. Hanxiang sees this duel as a perfect chance to stand out among the many geniuses present. He believes that if he kills this newcomer, he will firmly establish his position. The two fighters stand facing each other. Hanxiang looks at Unsol and tells him that while he may have courage, courage alone is not enough to survive in the Murim world. Then instructor Wong Gang orders the duel to begin. As soon as the signal is given, Hanxiang launches a fierce attack. Unsol quickly dodges the strike with skill. Hanxiang keeps attacking, and their swords clash loudly again and again. Through this exchange, Hanxiang feels how weak Unsol's sword resistance is. With a sarcastic smile, he realizes that Unsol is truly a complete beginner. Hanxiang bursts into laughter and mocks his opponent, then proudly declares that he will show him the true power of the thunderous fire rain sword. Hanxiang unleashes a series of extremely fast sword attacks. However, he is shocked when Unsol avoids every single strike with ease. From a distance, instructor Wong Gang watches carefully and thinks that Hanxiang's sword control is actually quite poor. On the other hand, he notices that Unsol is not only dodging quickly but also seems to predict every move in advance. This makes Wong Gang briefly suspect that Unsol might have learned the wandering beast path. However, Wong Gang quickly dismisses this thought. He knows that even though the wandering beast path is the basic martial art of the wandering beast pavilion, it is incredibly difficult to master. Only the most skilled masters can do so, and it is impossible for anyone, even a heaven-gifted genius, to learn it in just 2 weeks. Wong Gang decides that he cannot judge Unsol's true ability based only on his dodging. This duel is meant to test sword skill, not reflexes. At that moment, Unsol stops dodging and begins to counterattack using the 13 forms of fire rain. This sudden change shocks all the other trainees. Han Xiang sneers when he sees Unsol using a beginner-level technique. He thinks he could dodge it with his eyes closed. However, he soon notices that Unsol's version of the technique is slightly different from the standard form. Han Xiang is stunned when Unsol's strike breaks through his defense and hits him. Han Xiang becomes furious. He starts to believe that Unsol has been hiding his true strength all this time and is deliberately using a modified version of the forms to humiliate him. He convinces himself that Unsol is doing this to attract the instructor's attention and advance to the advanced hall immediately. Han Xiang realizes that if this continues, he will be the one who looks foolish. In rage, Han Xiang shouts that he will be the one to reach the advanced hall. He then uses his clan's sword art, the Asura sword style, and unleashes its deadly technique, the blood-shattering strike. Instructor Wang Gang recognizes this as a lethal move from the Asura sword sect. At the same time, he is impressed that Unsol remains calm and does not lose his balance, which again makes him reconsider the possibility that Unsol truly learned the wandering beast path. Han Xiang continues his ferocious assault, yelling that this is the end for Unsol. He uses another special technique, the protective bloody wind moon. The two swords collide, creating a massive explosion of energy. The remaining students and the instructor watch in shock. At that moment, Unsol recalls the 13th and final form of the fire rain techniques, infinite and boundless. The duel ends with Han Xiang collapsing to the ground, blood pouring from his mouth. The students stare in horror, wondering if he is dead. Unsol calmly puts his sword back into its sheath. Instructor Wang Gang confirms to himself that Han Xiang is indeed dead, having been struck precisely in a vital point. He then asks Unsol if he has always been a disciple of the Wandering Beast Pavilion. Unsol denies it. Wang Gang asks again, questioning whether Unsol is claiming to have fully mastered the Wandering Beast path in just 2 weeks. Unsol replies that he only learned the basics. Wang Gang scoffs sarcastically and asks whether the Wandering Beast Pavilion now teaches its disciples how to lie as well. Unsol tries to explain, but Wang Gang cuts him off, saying that he does not need excuses. He orders Unsol to clean up the body immediately. The students begin whispering among themselves, shocked that a murder occurred during a training duel and confused about why the killer is not being punished. Wang Gang shouts at them to be silent and reminds them that this is Hell Island, not an ordinary training hall. He declares that anyone who uses deadly techniques must also be prepared to die. After that, he announces that the test will continue. Several more duels take place after that. When all the fights are finished, Instructor Wang Gang gathers the students who lost. He tells them that they have failed the test and must leave immediately to find another martial arts hall. One of the defeated students protests and says that it was only one match, asking for another chance. However, Wang Gang firmly refuses. He explains that although they may have passed the earlier tests because of their physical strength, learning the fire rain sword requires more than that. It needs talent, potential, and the willingness to shed blood, sweat, and tears to break one's own limits. He tells them clearly that they failed because they lack these qualities. After that, he orders them to leave. The failed students leave the hall, and only Unsol remains. Wang Gang asks Unsol why he has not left yet. Unsol asks him if he is supposed to leave as well. The instructor explains that Unsol won his duel and passed the test, so he should move on to the advanced level. Unsol replies that if he has to advance, he would rather stay here instead. Wang Gang asks him why, and Unsol explains that the only sword technique he knows is the 13 forms of fire rain. He says that he has not truly learned anything yet in the intermediate hall. Wang Gang thinks to himself that Unsol has already learned the Wandering Beast path and even exposed the Asura sword sex technique, yet he still claims that he has learned nothing. In the end, Wang Gang agrees to teach him the thunderous fire rain sword, which is considered a continuation of the 13 forms of fire rain. However, he warns Unsol in a harsh tone that he hates cheap tricks meant to draw attention. He tells him that if he sees him use any sword technique other than the fire rain forms, he will cut off his head immediately. Wang Gang smiles to himself, finally understanding how Unsol managed to learn the Wandering Beast path in just 2 weeks. Unsol begins his training right away, practicing the piercing lightning technique from the thunderous fire rain sword. After a short time, Wang Gang stops him and says that it seems Unsol has already understood the core principles of the technique. Unsol looks at him in confusion. After 4 days, Unsol fully masters the training. Wang Gang reflects on the past 4 days he spent teaching Unsol. He had tested him in every possible way and confirmed that Unsol truly lacked the basic foundations of swordsmanship. He was indeed someone who had only just started learning the sword. However, Wang Gang is deeply impressed by Unsol's persistence and concentration. Unsol trained as if his life would end if he failed to learn martial arts. Wang Gang explains to Unsol that the thunderous fire rain sword relies on rapidly twisting the body to connect movements. He adds that all its techniques involve swinging the sword around the body, which makes them impractical in real combat. Even so, Wang Gang notices that Unsol tries to use every technique as if he were fighting to kill someone. Unsol asks if that is not the purpose of sword techniques. The instructor replies that demonic martial arts do require killing intent. However, to reach a higher level of mastery, the fire rain sword abandons the focus on killing. Wang Gang warns Unsol that if he cannot remove the killing intent from his mind, he will end up creating a martial art that will harm himself instead. Unsol realizes that Wang Gang is saying the same thing instructor Jin Gak told him before. Wang Gang then admits that in the past, and even now, he too lived with killing intent in his heart and killed everyone who stood in his way. Because of that, he lost his honor and pride, and his martial strength declined. Wang Gang advises Unsol that techniques meant only to kill may seem like a shortcut to greater power, but in reality, they become an obstacle on the endless path of swordsmanship. He tells him that he must let go of his killing intent. Unsol remembers his grandfather's words, that those who use the sword often carry a past filled with despair and tragedy, which is why people in the Muram world avoid speaking about their past. Unsol asks Wang Gang why he is telling him all of this. Wang Gang replies that he is telling him because he himself has lived with murder in his heart. Wang Gang asks Unsol for his name, and Unsol answers that his name is Bo Unsol. Wang Gang immediately realizes that he is the young man Jin Gak mentioned, the one who survived the second test. He tells Unsol that he has a serious problem. He explains that Unsol's biggest weakness is his lack of basic martial arts foundations. He says that Unsol's rivals have been learning martial arts since they were very young. If Unsol starts learning the fire rain sword properly only at the advanced hall stage, the gap between him and the others will grow even larger. Therefore, he tells him that Unsol must quickly master the basic martial arts to build a strong and stable foundation. Unsol bows deeply and thanks him. In his heart, he thinks that he is willing to give up even his soul for this chance to grow stronger. When Unsol arrives at the advanced hall, he immediately feels that the atmosphere is completely different. The aura here is heavier, and the trainees give off a much more dangerous and fierce feeling. He notices that no one looks at him with contempt anymore. He realizes that this change is because he killed Bio Han Xiang. He finds it ironic that when he cleaned and buried corpses, people looked down on him, but now that he kills people with a sword, he is respected. An old instructor welcomes Unsol, saying that he has already heard about him. He tells Unsol to sit down because the lesson is about to begin. The instructor announces that since there is a new trainee, he will explain the core teachings of the fire rain sword along with the 7 principles. He explains the basics clearly. Power must be evenly balanced throughout the entire body. One must focus on maintaining a stable and balanced posture. The chest should be drawn in, the back pushed out, and energy should not be concentrated into a single strike. Unsol listens carefully and understands these principles. He realizes that he would not have been able to understand this lesson properly if he had not gone through the intermediate hall training first. After finishing the lesson for the day, the instructor asks Unsol to follow him. Unsol follows him to a quiet garden. There, the instructor picks up a leafy branch and explains that there is a level where someone without a sword can defeat someone who holds one. At this level, a person no longer needs a real sword to use sword techniques. Suddenly, the instructor attacks Unsol with the branch. Then he stops and asks Unsol a question. He asks what Unsol would do if he were suddenly attacked like this while having no sword in his hand, and how he would respond using sword martial arts. He adds that while Unsol was training in the intermediate hall, the trainees here were learning Shining Mysticism, the first form of the fire rain sword, and are now studying its theory. He warns Unsol that if he does not understand this question, he will not teach him further, and tells him to answer carefully. Unsol thinks deeply. He imagines not having a sword in his hand. Then he answers that he would use his opponent's sword. He rushes forward, trying to snatch the branch from the instructor's hand. However, the instructor calls his decision reckless. Unsol is shocked when he suddenly finds the instructor standing behind him. He tries to chase and follow the instructor's movements, but the instructor easily avoids all his attempts. Unsol feels frustrated because he cannot even track his movements. He realizes that if he wants to stay in the advanced hall, he must impress this instructor. Unsol decides to use the wandering beast path to its fullest. He sharpens all his senses to read the flow and direction of the instructor's movements. He focuses completely and launches another attack. However, before he can grab the branch, the instructor releases his energy and throws Unsol away, slamming him to the ground. Before Unsol can stand up, the instructor grabs him and laughs loudly. He announces that Unsol has passed the test. Unsol asks in confusion how he passed when he could not even touch him. The instructor tells him that starting tomorrow, he will begin learning shining mysticism. He instructs Unsol to come early in the morning before the other trainees arrive. Unsol agrees without hesitation. After Unsol leaves, the instructor looks at the branch in his hand and thinks to himself that a wolf cub will always grow into a wolf. He smiles quietly and says that he has very high expectations for Unsol. Later, after that day's lesson ends, Unsol decides to walk around Hell Island by himself. As he walks, he thinks about what happened during the second test. He realizes that on this island, a fight can break out at any moment, without warning. Suddenly, he feels the presence of several people nearby. He quietly counts them in his mind and senses 5 people stepping out from between the trees. Their leader speaks to Unsol and says that Unsol's behavior has been strange ever since he came from the intermediate hall. He says they have decided to teach him a lesson. Another one of them adds that since Unsol was the first person to start killing, he should not blame them for what is about to happen. The leader proudly says that the 5 of them are geniuses among geniuses and are known as the 5 peak swords. He tells Unsol to prepare himself properly. Unsol listens calmly but suddenly thinks to himself that there is someone else nearby. Before he can say anything, the leader of the 5 peak swords suddenly shouts at Unsol. In the very next moment, the leader collapses and dies on the spot, right in front of his shocked companions. At that moment, a red-haired young man named Seo Jinha appears. He looks at Unsol and calmly says that they need to talk. The remaining members of the 5 peak swords are stunned by Jinha's sudden appearance and ask him why he is there. Jinha coldly tells them to leave, saying that he has no business dealing with losers like them. The 5 are furious at his words, but they know they are no match for him. They retreat, promising to return later to take revenge. Unsol watches silently and thinks to himself that this red-haired young man is extremely strong. Jinha, on the other hand, scoffs and calls the 5 peak swords cowards. Jinha then turns to Unsol and asks him directly which side he is on. Earlier, in the advanced training hall, the instructor tells the trainees that they have all learned the first technique of the fire rain sword. However, he explains that true mastery only comes when each person makes the technique their own. He announces that it is time to see the fiery raindrops each of them has created. The instructor calls on Unsol first and asks him to demonstrate his technique. Unsol steps forward and performs his version of the first fire rain sword technique. His sword moves quickly and sharply, releasing powerful and deadly strikes. The instructor comments that Unsol's technique is very stable and precise, but also notes that it is filled with strong killing intent. He allows Unsol to return to his place and then calls on Seo Jinha. Jinha steps forward, but instead of using the first fire rain sword technique, he demonstrates a completely different sword technique. This technique seems specially designed to counter and defeat Unsol's style. As Unsol watches, he realizes that this was not a coincidence, but a clear warning directed at him. Back in the present moment, Unsol thinks again about Jinha's earlier question, asking which side he is on. Jinha suddenly shouts at him, telling him to stop pretending to be ignorant. However, as Jinha looks at Unsol's face and listens to his voice, he realizes that Unsol is not lying. Unsol truly does not understand what is happening around him. Jinha then understands that the person he is searching for is not Unsol. Feeling disappointed because he was hoping for some excitement, Jinha tells Unsol to stop being annoying from now on. He then threatens him, saying that if Unsol continues to get on his nerves, he will kill him as well. After saying this, Jinha turns around and leaves. Unsol watches him go and begins to think deeply. He concludes that Jinha must be a spy. He realizes that there is much more happening beneath the surface than he originally thought. He understands that not everyone here is trying to become one of the 10 demon lords. Unsol thinks that while the chance to learn the martial arts of the 10 demonic sects is incredible, the way this competition is being carried out is extremely dangerous and poorly managed. He comes to the conclusion that this amazing opportunity is also something else at the same time. He finishes his thought by realizing that this opportunity is also a trap, meant to catch something, or someone. He wonders if there is a spy among them, but then decides not to worry about it. Whether it is a spy or a demonic martial artist, it is still an enemy he must face and defeat. As the sun begins to set, Unsol thinks that everything will soon begin in earnest. Nearby, a mouse is caught in a trap. Back in the training hall, the instructor announces that the day's training has come to an end. He admits that many of the trainees may have felt bored while learning the laws and principles of martial arts. However, he explains that even the greatest masters, who have fought countless battles, always set aside time to study these laws. He adds that simply knowing a martial art does not mean you can perform it properly, and even being able to perform it does not mean that you truly understand it. He tells them that he believes the laws he taught them will become the foundation for their journey in the Muram world. After saying this, he wishes all of them good luck. Suddenly, a bell rings loudly, and a voice echoes across the area. The instructor announces that the time has come and orders everyone to move toward the rocky mountain located in the center of the island. All the trainees gather at the mountain. The head instructor, Hook Ryan, checks and confirms that everyone has arrived. Then Ryan Yong declares that the third test has officially begun. He explains the rules clearly. They must kill each other until only 10 people remain alive. He tells them that they are free to hide or run away if they want, but they will not be able to escape forever. As time passes, the areas where they are allowed to stay will slowly shrink. Anyone who enters a forbidden area will be killed immediately by the killing demons. Unsol feels a powerful killing aura coming from these demons and realizes that they must be incredibly strong martial artists. One of the trainees asks if they are allowed to attack the killing demons. Ryan Yong laughs loudly, clearly pleased to see trainees with such bold ambition. He says that they are, of course, allowed to fight the killing demons and can even kill them if they are capable. Then he reveals an incredible reward. Anyone who kills a killing demon will instantly become one of the 10 demon lords. The trainees quickly understand what this means. Killing even one killing demon is far more difficult than killing all the other participants combined. Ryan Yong reminds them that they can form alliances or set traps for each other. He shouts that they must kill without hesitation if they want to survive, because this is the only path to becoming one of the 10 demon lords. As soon as the test starts, the trainees scatter in every direction. Unsol immediately realizes that he must move quickly. He knows that many trainees have already noticed him, and if he does not escape right away, there is a high chance that he will be attacked by a group, just like before. Unsol decides that his first goal is to reach a safe place. The safest place he can think of is the Wandering Beast Pavilion. He runs at full speed toward the familiar building. While moving, he notices that the texture of the ground beneath his feet has changed. Suddenly, he senses someone approaching. A wounded young man appears, running desperately and shouting for help. He says that someone is trying to kill him and promises to reward Unsol if he saves him. Unsol wonders if this could be a trick, but when he looks closely, he sees that the young man's wounds are real. Unsol then senses 3 people chasing after him and wonders if they are working together as a team. Unsol does not want to get involved, but he realizes that having this wounded man nearby will reveal his own location. At the last moment, Unsol grabs the young man and pulls him into a hidden hole in the ground. Soon after, the 3 pursuers arrive at the spot. They are confused and wonder where their target has gone. They insist that he could not have escaped so quickly. The leader becomes furious and says that he will definitely kill that bastard. He orders his companions to spread out and search, believing that the man could not have gone far. After the pursuers leave, Unsol and the young man crawl out of the hole. The young man thanks Unsol and says that he survived only because of him. Unsol thinks that this hole was not meant only for hiding. He believes that Master Saw prepared it especially for him. He remembers that while he was inside the hole, his wandering beast path senses expanded far more than usual. He was able to feel the vibrations of the pursuers' footsteps pressing against the ground and even sense the vibrations of their swords. Through these vibrations, he could understand everything around him, almost as if he were seeing it with his own eyes. Unsol realizes that this is the true wandering beast path, a technique that uses vibrations to sense the surroundings. He understands that this is what Master Saw wanted to teach him. Unsol then turns toward the young man. The young man introduces himself as Gum Choyong from the Blood Sect and asks for Unsol's name. Unsol ignores him and starts walking away. Choyong follows him and calls out, asking him to wait. He explains that as soon as the third test started, he ran into the forest, but the others chased him non-stop. He asks Unsol if he can travel together with him, saying that he feels Unsol is a trustworthy person because he helped him hide. Without waiting for an answer, he takes Unsol's silence as agreement and happily starts traveling with him. Suddenly, the sounds of a violent fight explode from somewhere nearby. Unsol tells his companion that a battle is happening ahead and that they should take another route instead. Cho-young is amazed by Unsol's ability to sense vibrations and asks him to teach him how to do it. Not far away, a lone fighter is facing several enemies at once. He shouts that he will take revenge for his fallen comrades, even if he has to sell his soul to do it. The word revenge echoes in Unsol's mind as he senses a familiar hatred coming from that fighter. Cho-young asks Unsol what is wrong, but Unsol suddenly announces that he has changed his plan. He says that they are going to join that fight. This shocks Cho-young. As Unsol moves toward the battle, he suddenly blocks a surprise attack aimed at him. The assassin who attacked him is shocked and asks how Unsol was able to stop the forbidden ultimate concealment technique. He wonders if Unsol is also a professional assassin. However, before he can react further, Unsol quickly and cleanly kills him. Unsol remembers how easily he dealt with that assassin and thinks that the concealment technique would have been extremely troublesome if he had not learned the wandering beast path. Meanwhile, Cho-young screams in fear at the sight of so much blood. Unsol thinks that if he helps this lone fighter defeat the assassins, the man might tell him what it feels like to finally achieve revenge. The remaining assassins decide to finish things quickly. One of them tells the fighter that he will kill him swiftly, out of respect for being the last survivor. Just as the assassin is about to strike, Unsol steps in and blocks the attack. The assassins are stunned and wonder where this person came from and whether more enemies have appeared. They quickly decide that Unsol must be killed as well. A fierce battle erupts. Unsol and the avenging fighter fight side by side against the assassins. One by one, they defeat them. Blood splashes everywhere as the battle grows more intense. Finally, the avenging fighter delivers the final blow to the last assassin. Covered in blood, the fighter laughs wildly and whispers that he has finally taken his revenge. After saying this, he collapses to the ground. Cho-young asks Unsol if it is finally over. At that moment, Cho-young suddenly moves closer to Unsol and tells him that although he is skilled, he should never lower his guard. Without warning, Cho-young attacks Unsol with a hidden dagger. Unsol easily blocks the attack. Cho-young is shocked and cannot understand how Unsol stopped him. Unsol tells Cho-young that this is all his fault. Because of him, Unsol says, he was unable to ask the other fighter about revenge. Cho-young panics and asks when Unsol found out about him. Unsol calmly replies that he knew from the very beginning. He explains that when they were hiding underground, he noticed that Cho-young was hiding weapons beneath his clothes. It was easy to tell because of how stiffly Cho-young moved his spine. Unsol then reveals that the reason he kept Cho-young with him was simple curiosity. He wanted to see what Cho-young would do. He believed that watching how someone tries to deceive others could be useful to him in the future. Cho-young refuses to accept this and insists that his acting was perfect. In desperation, he throws all his remaining hidden weapons at Unsol at once. Unsol easily dodges every attack. Cho-young thinks to himself that he felt something strange even earlier while chasing Unsol and wonders if Unsol can predict his movements. Unsol continues to avoid all the hidden weapons with ease and then strikes Cho-young directly. Unsol tells him that even the best hidden weapons are useless once they are discovered. Cho-young makes one final desperate charge toward Unsol, but Unsol quickly ends the fight and kills him, leaving his body soaked in blood. Unsol thinks that the fight was not easy and that it could have been very dangerous if he had not known about the hidden weapons beforehand. He watches the life fade from Cho-young's body and notices the same desperate attachment to life that he has seen on the faces of so many dying people. Unsol walks away from the scene, passing the bodies of the assassins and the fighter who sought revenge. When he reaches the avenging fighter's body, he pauses. This man is different. He died with a smile on his face. Unsol wonders what it truly feels like to successfully take revenge and whether he himself will be able to smile like that when he finally gets his own revenge. Unsol takes the swords from the dead assassin and continues moving forward. From far away, one of the killing demons watches Unsol and wonders if he is the one responsible for what happened. Another killing demon says that Unsol defeated professional assassins using only the basic techniques of the Fire Rain Sword sect. He admits that Unsol is clearly talented, but also says that many others on the island are just as talented. He adds that if Unsol does not grow stronger, he will not be able to survive on Hell Island. The next day, Unsol finds himself being chased by a group of trainees. One of them uses a metal whip and attacks him from a distance. Unsol manages to dodge one attack, but the whip suddenly changes direction in midair and strikes him from behind. Unsol realizes that they have no intention of giving up. He understands that if things continue like this, he will die unless he finds a way out of this dangerous situation. Meanwhile, at the instructor's camp, the head instructor asks for a report. His subordinate replies that out of the original 86 trainees, 41 are still alive. Head instructor Hook Ryanong is surprised that so many have survived even after 3 days. He concludes that the remaining trainees must all be skilled and decides that it is time to truly test their abilities. He then asks his assistant to bring him the map. Elsewhere on the island, one trainee nearly kills Unsol after snatching the sword from his hand. Unsol once again finds himself running away from his pursuers. He realizes that because of the weapons they are using, fighting in an open area puts him at a disadvantage. Because of this, he comes up with a plan that suits his situation. At the same time, head instructor Hook Ryanong studies the map and decides to restrict the combat area. He gives the order to release the killing demons in the Fire Rain Sword Sect area. Unsol heads straight toward the Fire Rain Sword Sect building, and his pursuers chase him inside. The pursuers wonder if he is hiding somewhere inside the building. One of them mocks Unsol, saying that he is completely cornered. Their leader believes that no matter how fast Unsol runs, he will not be able to escape them. Suddenly, Unsol attacks them from behind. The leader calls him a fool, thinking that this is a cheap trick that will not work on them. Unsol begins fighting them head-on, skillfully avoiding their weapon attacks. The leader is shocked and wonders how Unsol is able to read the paths of their sword techniques so clearly. Unsol uses the narrow corridors and the confusion of the situation to his advantage. He fights his pursuers fiercely. One of the pursuers realizes that fighting in such a cramped space weakens the power of their attacks. Before he can even finish this thought, Unsol strikes him down. In his final moments, the pursuer understands that Unsol had deliberately lured them into this place. Unsol thinks to himself that because of the narrow space, his enemies are forced to shorten their attacks. This reduces their strength and makes their movements easier to predict. He also notices that they are not as skilled as he feared. He realizes that if he fights them one by one, he has a real chance to defeat them all. One of the pursuers shouts and charges at Unsol, but Unsol dodges the attack. Another swings his whip, but the whip unexpectedly hits the wall, bounces back, and strikes Unsol. This causes Unsol to lose his balance and fall to the ground. Seeing this chance, one of the pursuers shouts to the others, telling them to move now and escape from the area. However, just as he tries to flee, he suddenly stops. Someone has blocked his path. A cold voice asks them what they think they are doing and whether they are trying to run away. Unsol watches the scene from a distance. After the mysterious fighter finishes killing the remaining pursuers, he turns toward Unsol and asks if he is their leader. The fighter praises Unsol's skill and then asks if the sword technique Unsol used earlier was the Fire Rain sword technique. The killer introduces himself as Wu Moon Chong and asks Unsol for his name. In a moment from earlier, Moon Chong was seen shouting at his subordinates, asking them if they were trying to run away. One of them hesitantly replied that they thought fighting in that place was a bad idea. Moon Chong became furious at their cowardice and killed them all in an instant. He thought to himself with disdain that this was exactly why he hated working with weaklings who had not even reached the advanced hall. Back in the present, just as Unsol is about to respond, Moon Chong suddenly laughs loudly. He says that he does not care about the name of someone who is about to die. Moon Chong attacks Unsol fiercely. Unsol tries to block the attack, but the chain whip wraps around his sword and easily breaks it. Moon Chong mocks him and says that he heard the advanced hall of the Fire Rain Sword Sect only taught him one defensive technique. Unsol is shocked. He wonders how his opponent knows about the shining mysticism and whether Moon Chong has an information network that Unsol knows nothing about. Moon Chong attacks again and scolds Unsol for letting his thoughts wander in the middle of a fight. The battle becomes even more intense. Unsol realizes that Moon Chong is destroying everything around him and that fighting someone like him in a narrow space gives Unsol no advantage. Because of this, Unsol creates distance between them. Moon Chong expresses his disappointment and tells Unsol that with skills like these, he is no match for him. Then Moon Chong launches a full power attack with his chain weapon, trapping Unsol from all sides in a web of attacks. He sarcastically asks if this is Unsol's final struggle, believing that a defensive technique like the shining mysticism will not be able to save him. However, Moon Chong is stunned when he sees that Unsol is still standing. Unsol then breaks free from the web created by Moon Chong's weapon. Moon Chong laughs loudly and declares that he will kill Unsol soon. Unsol calmly analyzes the situation. He realizes that while he can block the attacks using the shining mysticism, he does not have enough power to completely stop them. At that moment, he remembers his training and understands what he truly needs right now. He needs destructive power strong enough to pierce through steel. Unsol gathers all his energy and unleashes a massive attack. This attack completely catches Moon Chong off guard and shatters his defense, leaving him frozen in shock. After the battle, Unsol stands there, breathing heavily. He remembers how he countered Moon Chang's attack with a huge burst of energy, using the technique called unparalleled lightning and thunder, a terrifying move that completely destroyed his opponent. Unsol thinks that this technique truly has overwhelming power, just as the instructor said. However, he suddenly coughs up blood. He realizes that this technique is far too advanced for his current level and that he cannot use it freely yet. Although he is relieved that he won, he also realizes that the fight took too long. The restricted zones will soon change, so he knows he must move quickly. Suddenly, Unsol senses another presence nearby. He wonders why someone else would be here and freezes when he sees a killing demon standing in front of him. Unsol questions why a killing demon is in this place and wonders if the area became restricted during his fight. He thinks that he did not come here by running away from battle and wonders if he will be allowed to leave peacefully. The killing demon does not react, so Unsol assumes he can leave. However, as Unsol tries to pass by, the demon suddenly attacks from behind with incredible speed. Unsol imagines his neck being sliced if he fails to dodge. At the very last moment, Unsol dodges the attack. He realizes that if it were not for the wandering beast path, he would have certainly died, because he could not even sense the demon's presence before the sword was swung. Unsol prepares himself for a serious confrontation. He reminds himself not to be fooled by the demon's calm appearance. He knows that the moment he moves carelessly, the demon will strike again. Unsol remembers a lesson from Master Saul. When a predator hunts its prey, the prey is not easily caught, even if the predator is faster. This is because the prey moves in a zigzag pattern. However, apex predators always succeed because they attack the instant the prey moves. Unsol thinks about how to face such a terrifying opponent and recalls the rest of the lesson. If a predator attacks based on timing, then the solution is to make one's movements completely unpredictable. Deciding to use this strategy, Unsol begins by moving in a normal zigzag pattern. He then uses the wandering beast path to avoid the expected attacks. Finally, at the perfect moment, he makes a completely unexpected move and creates an opening in the demon's defense. Unsol finds himself frozen in shock. The killing demon stands in front of him for a short moment. Unsol thinks that it is already over and that he is doomed. However, to his surprise, the killing demon suddenly stops attacking and turns around to leave. Unsol wonders why the demon stopped and thinks that maybe he crossed the boundary of a restricted area without realizing it. He reflects on the fight and understands that he barely survived by dodging with everything he had. Even so, he was unable to create even a single opening in the demon's defense. He admits to himself that this is the level of a true master. He realizes that he was like a frog at the bottom of a well, unaware of how wide the world really is and how powerful the people in it can be. He concludes that the martial arts of the killing demons are on a level that he cannot even measure. Because of this, he is certain that the person who killed his grandfather must possess similar strength. With this realization, Unsol's determination grows stronger. He knows that if he wants to take his revenge, he must surpass this level of mastery no matter what. Suddenly, another person appears in front of him and calls him by his full name, Unsol of the Bao family. The man tells him that he has been searching for him for quite some time and that he heard Unsol learn the wandering beast path. Unsol thinks to himself that this man speaks as if he already knows him, just like the others. This means that information about Unsol has spread widely across the island. The man begins to introduce himself but suddenly stops. With a mocking tone, he says that someone who is about to die does not need to know his name. Without warning, he launches a surprise attack. Unsol easily avoids the strike. The attacker is impressed and says that Unsol predicted the path of the attack using his beast-like senses. He tells Unsol that he is certain Unsol will become one of the 10 demon lords in the future. For that exact reason, he says he must kill Unsol now, while he is still only a demon seed. Unsol notices that his opponent's flow of energy has completely changed. He remembers that not everyone on the island is aiming to become one of the 10 demon lords. He wonders if this man is one of those people. He quickly forces himself to clear his mind and focus only on the battle in front of him. As they exchange blows, Unsol feels something strange. A strange flow of energy pulls toward his opponent with every clash. This sensation reminds him of a lesson from his grandfather. His grandfather once explained that one of the bodies they examined had been killed by the 5 cutting tiger blades of the Habibong clan. His grandfather knew this because even though there were no visible wounds on the body, every bone inside was shattered. This was the signature of that technique, which works by sending internal energy into the opponent's body with each clash. Back in the present, Unsol suddenly shouts, realizing that the technique his opponent is using is the 5 cutting tiger blades of the Hebyong clan. His opponent is shocked that Unsol was able to recognize his martial art. Unsol then remembers another feature of this technique that his grandfather had explained. It includes a powerful absorption method that acts like a vortex, pulling everything toward it. This allows the user to control the opponent's weapon with every collision. Unsol continues recalling his grandfather's lesson. He was told that the Hebyong clan fights like a tiger, waiting for the moment when the opponent's sword becomes confused, then swallowing it whole in one decisive move. Young Unsol once asked his grandfather whether this clan was the strongest. His grandfather replied that the absorption technique is a double-edged sword. While it is very deceptive and powerful, it forces the user to stay extremely close to the opponent. Back in the present, Unsol decides to use this weakness against his enemy. He deliberately allows the absorption force to twist his opponent's sword toward him. His opponent, Fong Ak of the Hebe Fong clan, declares that he will now fight with full seriousness. He swears in the name of his clan that he will destroy this demon seed. When Fong Ak attacks, Unsol suddenly does something completely unexpected. He drives his sword straight into the ground. Fong Ak is stunned by this move. Using the sword as a pivot, Unsol kicks Fong Ak and knocks him off balance. At that moment, Unsol realizes that his plan is working. Fong Ak becomes furious and accuses Unsol of using dirty tricks. Unsol thinks to himself that the trick worked, but it did not cause much damage. That makes sense to him because his opponent has trained for a very long time. Still, Unsol now understands how to deal with him. Unsol remembers another lesson from his master. His master once taught him to wait for the opponent to attack first, because true speed is not about moving first, but about being a tiny fraction of a second faster at the exact moment of contact. Unsol decides that he will turn his opponent's energy absorption technique into his own advantage and use it to increase his speed. Fong Ak attacks again, but this time Unsol does not resist the pulling force at all. Instead, he allows himself to be pulled and moves along with the force, using that momentum to make his sword even faster. At the very last moment, Unsol suddenly changes the direction of his strike and successfully hits Fong Ak. Fong Ak is shocked. He wonders if Unsol has actually managed to use the energy absorption technique against him. Fong Ak finds this impossible to believe. His technique is powerful enough to pull even a rock from far away, and even highly skilled swordsmen struggle to control such a force accurately. He refuses to believe that a young man like Unsol could pull this off. Convinced it was a fluke, Fong Ak attacks again using the same method. Unsol calmly thinks that this only helps him. The stronger the absorption force becomes, the faster his sword moves. Fong Ak shouts in frustration, asking how long Unsol thinks this trick will keep working. Suddenly, Unsol notices something important. Fong Ak is no longer using the energy absorption technique. Fong Ak tells him that he does not even need that technique to defeat someone like him. He then rushes forward with a straightforward attack. Unsol realizes that this is exactly the moment he has been waiting for. He gathers himself and uses the first technique of the Fire Rain Sword, the Shining Mysticism. He launches a powerful counterattack, perfectly timing it for the moment when his opponent has completely abandoned his defense. The strike lands cleanly and becomes the finishing blow against Fong Ak. Fong Ak drops to his knees in shock and asks if that was the Shining Mysticism technique. Unsol confirms that it was and admits that it was a very dangerous move. Unsol reflects that in order to turn the Shining Mysticism, which is normally a purely defensive technique, into a deadly attack, he had to intentionally draw all of his opponent's other attacks toward himself. Fong Ak expresses his amazement, saying that he never imagined the technique could be interpreted and used in such a way. He then asks Unsol if he is simply going to leave him there. Unsol replies calmly that Fong Ak is not part of his revenge. Fong Ak finds this interesting and wonders how someone like Unsol could exist within the demonic sect. Unsol says that he hopes they will never meet again and then walks away. Fong Ak collapses due to his injuries. Suddenly, another person appears behind him. Fong Ak asks if this person has come to kill him. A masked killing demon speaks to Fong Ak and says that he was very useful for someone from the Orthodox sect, and that his death is unfortunate. Fong Ak realizes that they knew from the very beginning that he was a spy. The killing demon tells him that he underestimated the Devil's Palace. He then says goodbye and kills Fong Ak. Elsewhere on the island, another trainee is running desperately at full speed to survive. We then see Jin Ha pulling one hidden weapon after another out of her body. She stands there, badly injured and gasping for breath. A group of enemies appears in front of her. Their leader tells her that she has been very unlucky. He mocks her and asks if she really believes she can escape after being poisoned with the special hellish blood fortress poison. He says that unless she has an antidote, she is already doomed. Jinha curses her bad luck. She thinks to herself that she never knew there was such an organized group using hidden weapons and poisons. She realizes that there is a limit to what she can do alone. The enemies notice that Jinha is holding her sword in her left hand. They ask her if she plans to fight them like that. Their leader tells her that even if she is talented, a right-handed swordsman cannot suddenly become skilled with their left hand. He advises her to surrender. The group then attacks her together. Jinha manages to block and counter their attacks with unexpected skill, but she is injured in the arm. She suddenly realizes that another poison needle has struck her. She knows that if she does not get an antidote within 15 minutes, everything will be over for her. Surrounded by enemies and badly injured, Jinha starts thinking that surrendering might be her only option. Just then, she suddenly hears a scream. Her attackers are caught off guard as an unknown person ambushes them. One by one, they are killed while screaming and shouting, asking who is attacking them. At the final moment, Unsol appears and swiftly steps in, saving Seo Jinha. His movements are fast and decisive. He eliminates every attacker without hesitation, leaving their bodies scattered across the ground. Unsol stands quietly in the middle of the bloody scene. Jinha carefully steps back and tells him to wait, assuring him that she has no hostile intentions toward him. She then searches the body of one of the attackers and finds a small vial. She immediately realizes that it is the antidote. She thinks to herself that with this antidote, she will be able to deal more easily with the remaining members of the hellish blood fortress. As Unsol turns around and prepares to leave, Jinha asks him to wait once more. Unsol asks her what she wants. She tells him that she has been poisoned and only has 10 minutes before the poison spreads throughout her body. Unsol replies coldly that she is mistaken. He explains that he came here to kill everyone, including her. He adds that the only reason he is letting her live is because he does not feel the need to kill her with his own hands. Jinha admits that if he leaves her like this, she will die. She says that in the end, she is just another competitor to him. In desperation, she offers to work together with him if he gives her the antidote. Unsol asks her why he should do that. Jinha explains that only 20 people are left now, and everyone else belongs to organized groups. She says that no matter how strong Unsol is, he cannot fight all of them alone. She adds that if she works with him, she can provide him with valuable information about the martial arts of the other trainees. She also swears that she will never betray him if he saves her life. Unsol carefully thinks about her offer. Based on everything he has seen so far, he decides that although Jinha is proud and independent, she does not seem like someone who would rely on deception or betrayal. He asks her about the conditions of their agreement. Jinha suggests that they work together until only the two of them remain, and that they swear never to betray each other. After thinking for a moment, Unsol throws the antidote to her. Jinha quickly thanks him. Suddenly, Unsol hears a strange sound. He wonders if another restricted area has just been created. He tells Jinha that they need to leave immediately. Jinha replies that she does not think this area has become restricted. Unsol urges her to think carefully. He explains that most of the island has already become restricted. If a new restricted area has appeared now, it likely means that the remaining contestants will start heading toward this place. Just as he says this, several other groups of trainees begin to appear, slowly surrounding them. Unsol realizes that it is already too late to escape normally. Among the newcomers, one man catches Unsol's attention. He feels that this person is different from the others. One of the trainees suggests that everyone should agree to kill Unsol and Jinha first. Another trainee identifies them, saying that one is Bo Unsol, the one who learned the wandering beast path, and the other is Seo Jinha, who should not be underestimated for her sword skills and her investigations into the other trainees. The leader of the opposing group thinks to himself that they now know about both Unsol and Seo Jinha. He wonders why they had not formed a team earlier and guesses that they must be working together now. Unsol notices the vial of antidote powder that Jinha picked up earlier. Jinha tells Unsol that she will use the hellish blood fortress poison and that this will give them a chance to escape. She throws the powder into the air. The opposing trainees panic, believing that the powder is the deadly poison of the hellish blood fortress. Taking advantage of their fear, Unsal and Jinha immediately run away. Soon, one of the pursuers realizes that the powder is not actually poisonous and shouts that they have been tricked. The leader orders everyone to chase after them. Jinha thinks to herself that the powder creates thick smoke, which makes it very useful for deceiving the eyes. She also realizes that fighting in an open area is not in their favor. She suggests that they head toward the rock formations, where many small caves are located. Unsal asks her if she is thinking the same thing he is. Jinha replies that they need to find a cave to fight in. Unsal agrees and starts leading the way toward one. He leads her to a cave that has a narrow entrance and a long passage inside. Jinha is shocked by how well he planned everything. She finds it hard to believe that he only recently learned the wandering beast path, and she starts wondering about his true identity. They run at full speed toward the rocky area. When they arrive, Jinha notices a strange fog that was not there before. Unsal also agrees that something feels wrong. Soon, a killing demon appears from within the fog. Jinha realizes in shock that these figures are killing demons and that they have entered a restricted area. Unsal observes carefully and notices that the demons are only watching and not attacking. He concludes that the instructors intentionally made this place a restricted area because they knew the trainees would head here. Jinha asks what they should do next. Unsal tells her that as long as they do not cross the border of the restricted area, the killing demons will not attack them. He adds that if they have to fight, this is actually not the worst place. If they stand with their backs to the restricted area, it will be just like fighting inside a cave with no way to retreat. Jinha agrees, saying that they have no other choice. The two of them prepare to fight. At that moment, the group that had been chasing them arrives. Their leader mocks them and asks if they are finally done running. The two sides face each other, with the killing demons silently watching from behind. One of the trainees complains that Unsal and Jinha have caused them too much trouble. He decides not to waste any more time and orders everyone to attack at once. Suddenly, a loud and powerful voice echoes across the area. Head instructor Hook Ryanong announces that the decisive moment has arrived. He declares that this final battle will decide the single champion of the Devil's Palace. As soon as his words end, it feels like a signal to start. The attackers rush forward in a single massive wave, like a raging flood, trying to overwhelm Unsal and Jinha with their numbers. Instantly, a brutal and chaotic battle breaks out. Swords clash loudly, and screams fill the air. In the middle of the chaos, one attacker sees a brief opening and throws poison-hidden weapons toward Unsal. Thanks to his sharp senses, Unsal dodges them at the last moment, and the weapons fly past him and stab into the ground. Unsal and Jinha fight with incredible courage and ferocity. Jinha, in particular, moves with astonishing speed and grace. She weaves through the enemies like a deadly butterfly dancing through flames, cutting them down one by one with precise sword strikes. Suddenly, one of the strongest attackers appears from the crowd and launches a dangerous and sneaky attack toward Jinha, trying to take advantage of the chaos. Jinha notices the attack just in time and blocks it with her sword. However, the powerful impact forces her to step back several paces, and her arm begins to shake. After quickly steadying herself, Unsal and Jinha stand back to back. Together, they form a solid wall against the enemies who are closing in on them from all sides. As the fight continues and the number of attackers keeps growing, Jinha suffers a deep wound in her shoulder. Blood flows freely, and despair begins to fill her heart. She wonders if this is where her life will end. She thinks that she has fought with all her strength and given everything she had. Because of that, she feels no regret about the path she chose. Still, the thought of death makes her hesitate, and her determination begins to waver. Unsal immediately senses the despair creeping into her. The thought of having no regrets echoes in his own mind. At that moment, a memory rises within him. He sees his grandfather's warm and gentle hand patting his head. Then that image suddenly changes into the horrifying sight of his grandfather's bloodied and broken face as he died in Unsal's arms. Unsal's resolve erupts like a volcano. Deep in his heart, he makes a powerful vow to himself. No matter what, he will never allow himself to die in a place like this. Not before he fulfills his revenge. Fueled by this burning determination, Unsal throws himself back into the center of the battlefield with strength far greater than before. His movements become sharper and faster as he cuts through the enemy ranks with swift, merciless strikes. His sword turns into a storm of steel and death, leaving no room for mercy. He rushes forward at lightning speed toward the remaining attackers, many of whom have not yet realized what is happening. One opponent curses loudly as he witnesses Unsol's unstoppable brutality, screaming that Unsol is a demon and not a human. Others watch in horror as their comrades fall one after another, terrified and confused about the frightening sword technique Unsol is using. The leader of the group quickly understands that Unsol is the biggest threat to their entire plan. He shouts at the top of his lungs, ordering everyone to ignore all else and focus only on Unsol. He commands them to take him down first, no matter the cost. At that critical moment, when every enemy turns their eyes and weapons toward him, Unsol recalls his master Solwu's teachings. He remembers being told to trust his instincts in battle and to move according to his senses without hesitation or thought. In that clear moment, Unsol realizes that he has already grasped the true essence of his master's sword art. With absolute confidence, Unsol unleashes Solwu's practical martial arts. He moves like a ghost through the battlefield, his opponents unable to follow his movements with their eyes. One by one, he defeats them with deadly precision and skill, leaving behind only screams of pain and fallen bodies scattered across the ground. As Unsol pauses briefly to catch his breath and think about how effective Solwu's martial arts truly are, the leader of the attackers suddenly strikes from a blind spot. Taking advantage of Unsol's momentary distraction, he launches a devastating punch. Unsol senses the danger at the last instant. Without thinking, his body reacts on its own, and he barely manages to block the punch with his sword. Now face to face, the group leader coldly tells Unsol that his time is over and that this is the end for him. The punch is terrifyingly powerful. Even Unsol's sword, which had endured countless blows, begins to crack like fragile glass under the force. The violent impact sends Unsol flying through the air before he crashes heavily onto the ground far away. From her position in the battle, Jinha screams Unsol's name as she watches him fall. One of the attackers mocks her cruelly, saying it is too late and that Unsol is already dead after taking such a blow. Jinha screams with all her strength, begging Unsol to get up and warning him to be careful. She suddenly realizes that the real danger has only just begun. With panic in her voice, she shouts that Unsol is lying inside a forbidden zone, a place no one is allowed to enter. Unsol lies on the ground, badly injured and unable to move. A masked killing demon slowly approaches him, step by step, like death itself coming to claim its prey. Unsol looks up weakly and sees the demon reaching out a hand to deliver the final blow. At that exact moment, head instructor Hook Ryanong roars loudly, ordering everyone to stop fighting immediately. Hearing this command, the killing demon's hand freezes just inches away from Unsol's face. In that breath-stopping moment, Master Solwu appears suddenly like a shadow. He places his cold sword against the killing demon's neck, stopping the attack and saving his disciple from certain death. Unsol looks up in shock and barely manages to whisper his master's name, Solwu. Feeling safe at last, his strength finally gives out. Overcome by pain and exhaustion, he loses consciousness and falls into darkness, realizing that this terrifying trial is finally over. Moving at full speed, head instructor Hook Ryanong rushes toward them. Filled with anger and concern, he shouts orders to bring the mad doctor immediately, warning that the boy will die if they delay and that such rare talent must not be lost. One of his assistants objects, questioning the sudden decision to cancel the third stage of the test in such an unprecedented way. However, the head instructor firmly declares that he will take full responsibility for his decision in front of everyone. The instructor thinks to himself with overwhelming happiness that he has finally found the person he has been searching for all these years. He believes Unsol is a truly rare individual, someone with amazing reflexes, a pure and sharp killing intent, and a mind that does not shake even in the most dangerous and hopeless situations. As the unconscious Unsol is carried away, the instructor sees him like an uncut gemstone. Though still rough and unpolished, he is a perfectly balanced and extremely rare talent, someone worthy of becoming one of the 10 true demon disciples who will lead the next generation of the Devil's Palace. Later, inside one of the grand halls of the Devil's Palace, Hua Wai Mong, one of the powerful elders, questions the head instructor about his reckless choice. The assistant reminds them that the original plan, which was made according to the will of the master of the Beong Wing, was to select only 12 survivors. Out of them, 10 would join the 10 demonic sects, while the remaining 2 would act as hidden observers, serving as eyes and ears in the shadows. Elder Wai Mong sharply scolds the instructor, warning him that he will face severe punishment for ending the test with 2 extra survivors. However, the instructor replies calmly and confidently confidently, saying that he is fully prepared to accept any punishment and that he does not regret his decision at all. The elder sighs deeply, expressing his concern about how the envoys of the 10 demonic sects will react when they soon arrive to choose their disciples. Still, the instructor reassures him with strong confidence, stating that none of those envoys have a better eye than him when it comes to recognizing true talent. Unsal later wakes up to find himself lying in a soft and comfortable bed inside a room he has never seen before. Feeling confused, he wonders where he is and how he ended up there. A strong smell of medicinal herbs fills the air, and from that alone, he realizes that he must be in a medical area meant for treating the injured. He carefully checks his body and is shocked to discover that all his wounds have completely healed. Not only the visible injuries, but even the serious internal damage caused by using sword techniques beyond what his body could handle is gone. Unsal is deeply amazed by the skill of the Devil's Palace doctor. The treatment feels almost miraculous and far beyond anything he had expected. Slowly and carefully, Unsal gets out of bed and opens the door, stepping into a long and quiet hallway. A servant who had been waiting outside greets him respectfully, calling him young master, and politely asks him to follow. The servant leads Unsal into a large and luxurious hall where all the other survivors of the brutal test are already seated. Unsal looks through a huge round window and sees a wide, beautiful view outside. Curious, he asks where they are, and the servant explains that this is the central building of Hell Island. Unsal realizes that this was the only place on the island he had never been able to explore, a place always surrounded by mystery. Another servant kindly asks Unsal if he would like to order some food, telling him that anything he wants can be prepared after everything he has endured. After thinking for a moment, Unsal orders just 2 bowls of noodles. It is a simple meal, but it reminds him strongly of his past. Soon, the hot bowls of noodles are placed in front of him. The moment he sees them, warm memories flood his mind. He remembers sitting together with his grandfather, sharing noodles and smiling happily. While he is lost in these memories, he suddenly notices Seo Jin-ha sitting across from him at the same table, quietly watching him. Surprised, Unsal asks her why she is sitting there without asking him first. After a short silence, Jin-ha finally speaks and thanks Unsal for saving her during the battle. She explains that without his help and timely intervention in the final fight, she would have surely died and become just another lost soul. She admits that she was already standing on the edge of death. Unsal looks confused by her sudden gratitude and answers simply that he only defeated the enemies who were blocking his path. Jin-ha then explains more clearly. She tells him that according to the strict rules, only 12 people were supposed to survive after the 3rd stage. However, to save Unsal from being killed by the killing demon, the instructor forcefully stopped the test. Because of that decision, 14 people survived instead of 12 and were allowed to live. From Jin-ha's point of view, Unsal was the direct reason she was still alive. Because of that, she wanted to thank him properly, face to face, even though she admitted that speaking so openly and emotionally was not in her nature at all. Then she added another piece of information that made Unsal freeze. 4 full days had passed since he lost consciousness after the battle. Unsal was visibly shocked. He had assumed that at most a single day had gone by since the bloody chaos on Hell Island. Jin-ha explained that he had been extremely lucky. The mad doctor just happened to be present on the island at the time. She then told him the story of that legendary figure. The doctor was known throughout the world as the Divine Hand, the greatest physician to ever exist. No injury was beyond him. However, his brilliance shattered the day he failed to cure the only woman he had ever loved from a terminal illness. After her death, he lost his sanity and disappeared from the world. Despite his madness, rumors claimed that his skills had never faded. As long as a person still had even a single breath left in their body, the Divine Hand could pull them back from death itself. Unsal immediately understood. That legendary doctor was the one who had treated him. He closed his eyes tightly, a sharp pain piercing his chest, not from injury, but from regret. He wished, more than anything, that his grandfather had been able to meet that doctor before his death. Seeing his reaction, Jin-ha decided to offer him one final piece of information, a last courtesy to a former comrade in arms. She lowered her voice and revealed a dangerous secret. The killing demons they had encountered during the test were not ordinary guards. They were genuine masters, veterans specially dispatched by the 10 demonic sects themselves to evaluate the trainees. Only then did Unsal fully understand why their martial arts had been so terrifyingly refined. After a moment of silence, Unsol asked her a question that had been gnawing at him. Did she know the real reason the head instructor had gone so far as to save him? Jinha shook her head. That was the very same question troubling her. She pointed out that the instructor had been unnaturally determined to make Unsol one of the 10 demon disciples. Curious, she asked whether Unsol's clan had any connection to the instructor, or whether they had met in the past. Unsol immediately denied it. There was no relationship, no hidden tie, and no prior encounter of any kind. Jinha frowned, even more confused than before. She then revealed the consequence of that decision. The head instructor had been severely punished for breaking the rules. He was forced to step down from his position and ordered to return immediately to the Devil's Palace. Unsol stood there in silence, unable to comprehend it. Why would a complete stranger risk his status, his future, and his authority to save him, knowing full well what the consequences would be? Before he could find an answer, a deep, resonant bell echoed throughout the entire area, abruptly cutting off their conversation. Jinha looked up. The signal had finally been given. This bell meant that everyone still alive on Hell Island was to gather immediately. There was only one possible reason for it. The leaders and envoys of the 10 demonic sects had arrived to choose their disciples. Soon, all 14 survivors assembled in a vast hall at the center of Hell Island. Bo Unsol stood among them, his senses on edge. The hall was eerily silent. Despite the presence of so many powerful figures, not a single footstep could be heard. As he wondered about this unnatural stillness, one of the leaders stepped forward. His gaze swept across the group before he raised his hand and pointed at a trainee. "You there." The man introduced himself as Bolsa, the deputy leader of the Death Spirit sect, and called forth Manhwa. He asked him directly whether he would become the successor of the Death Spirit sect. Manhwa looked stunned and protested that he had trained in saber arts his entire life and had never once used a spear. Bolsa dismissed the concern without hesitation. He explained that Manhwa had been born with the perfect physique and constitution to master the Death Spirit spear. Despite his hard work, Manhwa would never reach true greatness with the saber because it did not suit his innate talent. "If you understand," Bolsa said calmly, "then follow me." After a brief hesitation, Manhwa clenched his fists, nodded, and stepped forward, walking behind Bolsa toward his fate. After that, another leader steps forward. He is an old man with a long white beard and a large, unique hat. He swallows lightly, as if preparing himself, and thinks that it is now his turn. The old man introduces himself as Yahello, the legendary master of 10,000 poisons and the deputy master of the hellish blood star. As soon as he speaks, the remaining trainees grow tense. They all remember his terrifying reputation, a poison master said to be able to kill every living being around him with just a single motion of his hand. Yahello slowly raises his finger and calls out a name. Seo Jinha. He extends his hand toward her and calmly asks if she is willing to become the successor of the hellish blood star. Jinha is completely stunned. Her eyes widen in disbelief. All her life, she has been recognized as a sword genius. A memory flashes through her mind, of herself defeating her peers with nothing but a wooden sword. And now, this man is asking her to join a sect known for creating living poison weapons. Yahello looks at her and speaks again. He says that the most terrifying poison in the world is not something that enters the body, but a poisoned heart. Then, without hesitation, he reveals that he knows what she did before the third stage of the test. He accuses her of using a girl in the main castle's martial arts hall to try to kill all the trainees. And when that plan failed, he says she killed the girl immediately to erase all evidence. Jinha shouts back in anger and desperation. She claims that the girl was the one who suggested the plan first and that the girl tried to kill her before anything else happened. She insists that accusing her of covering her tracks is an unfair and illogical conclusion. Yahello raises his hand and interrupts her. He tells her that he does not blame her at all. In fact, he says that the ability to kill countless lives without hesitation in order to achieve a goal is a perfect quality for mastering poison arts, and even something admirable. He continues, explaining that while she may believe she is talented with the sword, her limits will prevent her from ever standing at the very top of the martial world. He says that only the chosen few can truly dominate the world with a sword. Then he calmly states that her talent for poison far surpasses her talent with the blade. The words, "chosen ones," echo repeatedly in Jinha's silent mind. She glances quietly toward Unsol, who is standing among the remaining trainees. She remembers how he once said that he only began learning swordsmanship after coming to the 10 demon disciples test. Yet, despite that, she personally witnessed his skill, already equal to what took her 10 long years to achieve. In that moment, Jinha understands who the true chosen one of the sword really is. Having made up her mind, she steps forward. She announces that if that is the case, she will accept becoming a disciple of the hellish blood star. Jak Yehun smiles faintly and tells Seo Jinha to follow him. After they leave, another leader steps forward. He is wearing a striking red robe and announces that it is now his sect's turn. He introduces himself as Hook Gon of the Hua Sword Sect. A ripple of excitement spreads through the trainees. Many recognize him immediately. He is known as the Sword Demon, the disciple of the former Hua sect leader, and currently ranked number 1 in the demonic path. Tension fills the air. Some trainees wonder who he will choose, while others desperately hope their name will be called. Hook Gon raises his hand and points directly at Bo Unsal, calling him forward. He tells Unsal that he has heard Instructor Jean and even Elder Dan Singh speak highly of him. He also asks whether it is true that Unsal inherited the ultimate art of Instructor Chun. Unsal confirms that it is true. Hook Gon expresses high expectations for Unsal's future and tells him that the depth of the Hua Sword Sect's sword arts is limitless. He says that Unsal must train with everything he has. As Hook Gon turns away, Unsal's eyes flicker with hesitation. The image of his master, Sawu, rises in his mind. Suddenly, Unsal raises his voice and announces that he will not join the Hua Sword Sect. Hook Gon freezes and turns back in shock, asking what Unsal just said. A violent red aura bursts out from his body as he angrily demands whether Unsal truly dares to refuse becoming his sect's successor. Unsal staggers under the overwhelming pressure but answers with difficulty. He says that he heard trainees are allowed to refuse offers. Hook Gon stares at him coldly and asks where he intends to go after rejecting the Hua Sword Sect. Unsal replies firmly that he will go to the Nanjia Pavilion. Hook Gon's shock deepens. He repeats the name, Nanjia Pavilion, with clear contempt. His red aura flares even more violently as he shouts in rage, demanding how Unsal could choose such a ruined and forgotten place. He accuses Unsal of deliberately insulting his sect by making such a choice. Unsal feels the pressure pressing down on his body so heavily that it almost feels like it will crush him. At that moment, he truly understands that this terrifying force is the power of the number 1 sword demon of the demonic path. Just then, someone suddenly steps forward and stands in front of Unsal, blocking Hook Gon's overwhelming aura. Hook Gon's anger immediately explodes even more, and he shouts in fury, asking how a mere master of a secret hall dares to block his way. The man standing there is Master Sawu. Calmly and slowly, Sawu places his hand on the hilt of his sword. The other trainees watch in complete shock and fear, wondering if this man has lost his mind for daring to draw his sword in front of the sword demon. Unsal recognizes him at once and softly whispers, "Master Sawu." Hook Gon sneers coldly and mocks Sawu, asking if he truly believes he can cross the line just because he is friends with Instructor Jean. One of the elders observing the scene grows worried, thinking that if a real fight breaks out here, the remaining candidates could be killed by the aftershocks alone. As the tension reaches its breaking point and Sawu shifts slightly, another voice suddenly cuts in. A different leader steps forward with a gentle smile and speaks in a calm tone, saying that everyone is clearly feeling very uncomfortable. This blonde-haired leader, dressed in a green robe, places his hand on Hook Gon's sword and asks him to stop. Hook Gon glares at the man furiously. The newcomer introduces himself as Dan Chong, the deputy master of the Nanjia Pavilion. Dan Chong politely asks Hook Gon to let this matter go, just this once, for his sake. The other elders reluctantly agree, and one of them even laughs lightly, saying that someone had to be chosen for the Nanjia Pavilion anyway. Hook Gon shoots a sharp and dangerous glare at Unsal and Master Sawu, making both of them feel tense. Before leaving, he issues a final warning to Dan Chong, telling him to take Unsal and leave immediately before his sword moves on its own. Dan Chong bows respectfully, thanking him for his understanding. Then he turns with a smile and asks Unsal and Sawu to follow him. As Unsal walks away, he thinks about the terrifying aura he felt earlier. It was filled with intense killing intent aimed directly at him. He realizes that if Dan Chong and Sawu had not intervened, Hook Gon would have killed him without hesitation. The three of them leave together. Master Sawu speaks to Unsal, praising him and saying that his skills have improved greatly since the last time they met. Unsal laughs lightly and replies that it is all thanks to Sawu teaching him the wandering beast path. Dan Chong pats Unsal on the head and says he is surprised that Unsal chose the Nanjia Pavilion, but also calls calls him a good kid. Unsol answers honestly, saying that he felt the path of the Nanjia Pavilion suited him well in many ways. After walking for a while, Dan Chong announces that they have arrived and gestures ahead, revealing the Nanjia Pavilion. Unsol freezes in shock at the sight before him. Instead of the quiet and solemn place he imagined, he sees a lively market filled with people and noise. Dan Chong asks if he is surprised and explains that unlike other sects that control markets from behind the scenes, the Nanjia Pavilion lives by being fully self-sufficient. Unsol looks around and notices that most of the people nearby appear quite old. He asks Dan Chong if there are any disciples around his age in the pavilion. Dan Chong smiles awkwardly and explains that in the past, many young disciples came after hearing legends about the Nanjia Pavilion, but most of them either died during training or ran away. Unsol quietly understands the situation. Dan Chong then points to a spot nearby and says it looks suitable. He tells Unsol that this will be his residence from now on. He adds that if anything needs fixing, Unsol can speak to Master Gol, the blacksmith Wang Gol, and get any tools he needs from him. Dan Chong and Sawu prepare to leave. Dan Chong calls out to Sawu, saying he is heading off. Sawu turns to Unsol and bids him farewell, telling him to keep training seriously. Unsol asks worriedly if Sawu will not be staying here. Dan Chong explains that Sawu is the master of the secret hall, and even though he stepped in to protect Unsol, he does not have the authority to directly oppose the sword demon like that. Because of this, he must pay a price for his actions. Unsol asks anxiously what paying the price means and whether that is why Sawu is leaving. Sawu reassures him not to worry too much, explaining that it is only a light punishment and that he will not be gone for long. He then lightly hits Unsol on the back and jokingly warns him not to even think about slacking off just because he is not around. Sawu assures him with a smile that he will be checking on him often to see how his training is going. Unsol watches his master walk away and tells him to take good care of himself. After Master Sawu leaves, Dan Chong turns toward Unsol and calls him by his full name, Bo Unsol. He then says something unexpected, telling him that he cannot yet be considered a true disciple of the Nanjia Pavilion. Unsol looks confused by these words. Dan Chong explains that even though Unsol has become one of the 10 demon disciples, that does not automatically make him an official disciple of the Nanjia Pavilion. With a serious expression, Dan Chong tells him that weak people are not allowed to become disciples in their pavilion. Unsol thinks for a moment and asks if that means once he becomes strong enough, he can immediately be accepted as a disciple without going through any extra steps. Dan Chong laughs and confirms that this is true. He explains that they do not care about pointless rules or formal procedures. Dan Chong adds that every disciple of the Nanjia Pavilion represents the pavilion itself, so there is no need for oaths or forced loyalty. He tells Unsol not to worry about anything else and to focus only on training his martial arts and becoming stronger. He must reach a level where he can naturally be acknowledged as a disciple of the Nanjia Pavilion. Dan Chong then tells Unsol that everyone in the pavilion can be considered his teacher. This surprises Unsol, but Dan Chong adds with a sly smile that whether they choose to teach him or not depends entirely on them. The next day, Unsol heads toward Chajiang Peak. He climbs the mountain step by step, breathing heavily from exhaustion. As he struggles upward, he thinks to himself that the summit is not much farther. He remembers Dan Chong's instructions from the previous day, when he told him to go to the peak and said that a master who could teach him the ultimate internal energy cultivation method was waiting there. When Unsol finally reaches the top, a massive bald man covered in scars greets him. The man asks if he is the one chosen to become a disciple of the Nanjia Pavilion. Unsol nods and confirms it. The master says that Deputy Master Dan informed him that Unsol came here to learn an internal energy cultivation method. However, he looks confused and points out that Unsol already seems to have mastered some kind of technique. He asks why Unsol would need to learn another one. Unsol feels completely confused and dissatisfied by these words. Suddenly, the master shouts loudly in his face, asking if he cannot feel the true energy flowing inside his body. He says that this energy seems to have been built up carefully and systematically since childhood. Unsol answers honestly that he has lived his entire life as an undertaker and has never learned any internal energy cultivation technique. Hearing this, the master steps closer and says that there are only two possibilities. Either Unsol is the biggest liar he has ever met, or he somehow mastered internal energy without even realizing it. Unsol insists that he is telling the truth and asks the master master to check his body himself. The master then asks him if he would mind if he completely destroyed the internal energy inside him. Even though Unsal is clearly nervous, he answers that he does not mind. The master grabs Unsal's arm to examine his energy and is immediately shocked. He discovers that Unsal's body is filled with true energy, yet there is no circulation at all. He realizes that Unsal has been unconsciously gathering energy in his lower dantian without ever circulating it. He thinks to himself that this situation should be impossible. As Unsal groans in pain, the master grabs him angrily and shouts, demanding to know who did this to him. He continues yelling, asking who taught him to recklessly push true energy into his body like this. Unsal asks in confusion what the master means by building true energy. The master responds by asking whether Unsal has ever learned a way to calm his mind or practiced a specific breathing method. Unsal thinks for a moment and answers that if it is about breathing, there is one method his grandfather taught him long ago. The master immediately orders him to demonstrate it. Unsal takes a deep breath and begins using the breathing technique his grandfather taught him. The master watches closely and is shocked by what he sees. He realizes that Unsal is circulating his energy while standing still. This makes him understand that Unsal can circulate true energy in any posture. He silently notes how incredible this breathing method is. After watching for a while, the master tells Unsal to stop. He asks if his grandfather was the one who taught him this breathing technique, and Unsal confirms it. Unsal explains that when he used to play a game involving corpses with his grandfather told him that this breathing method was meant to help someone breathe more easily while inside a coffin. If you enjoyed this story and want to know what happens next, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment part 2 below. Your support really helps, and the next episode is going to be even crazier.